All right, good morning, everyone. If I could ask you to take your seats, please, and we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you very much. So I'd like to welcome you all today to councillors, media and our public and staff. Thank you. And I would just like to advise that the meeting has been live streamed, and I think we're well aware of that. But to those that are watching through this mechanism, just to let you know that when the PowerPoint presentations come up through the course of our meeting, they are going to be available online for viewing at the council's website at Rotorua Lakes Council.nz. So that's just, there's a bit of a gap there, so I want you to know that, and it's really nice to know people are watching live. That's lovely, so thank you for that. Right, apologies please. There is one already from Councillor Hunt. Would someone move that be accepted? Thank you. Councillor Okawatate, seconded. Councillor McVicker. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Any declarations of interest? None. Any urgent business? Councillor Gould? Yes.
At the last meeting about the financials, we were told that the computer system wasn't quite right, or some reports weren't coming through. This has now been 6 weeks since that meeting. We've still got no financials to report on. This report today doesn't mention any financials, just mentions about the departments, but no dollars and figures. To do with the annual plan process, we've got figures for last year, but we haven't been advised whether they are correct or any big carryover figures for 2014-2015, because it shows that our revenue for 2014 was 109 million, our expenditure was 110 million, and for 2015 it shows 109 revenue and 108 expenditure.
That you have a concern over the lack of the financials here today? Okay, so so we'll just take a pause there for a moment, Councillor Gould, while we consider how to deal with this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. So we'll just take a pause and think about how to deal with this. I'll ask the CEO how he would like to respond, but certainly we will allow you those questions today. As far as the green corridor is concerned, I think that will come up through the content in our agenda, and I think we can deal with that your questions at that point. So I'll just refer to the CEO. Would you like to deal with it now or later on? You'd like to deal with it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor, could I remind you that at the last Operations and Monitoring meeting, there was a timetable provided for disclosure of the annual report. That timetable indicated that by next month, at the end of this month, a draft annual report will be provided to Risk and Audit, and that the council will consider that in October. So that was the clear report provided to you. Look, I think this is always a time that councillors feel uneasy about timeframes, but I think the key issue that we're dealing with here is that this organisation is a relatively large, very complex organisation with a number of subsidiaries that the finance team need to look at and to consolidate. We also are required to meet audit standards and international accounting standards, and in addition to that, a set of standards which are brought to us by the Local Government Act. So this is actually a complex process to get to the end of year position. So we're not a small business which is operating under a set of relatively simple accounts. We're a large, complex organisation that is required to consolidate our finances, to have them audited, and then to disclose them in prescribed ways. So this does take a period of time. Today, for your to ease any concerns that you may have, that you may you may well be sitting thinking, but gosh, I don't want to be surprised as to what the results are. Our Chief Finance Officer will actually provide you with a heads up as to where our end of year position is sitting. But that will only be to ensure that you're not sitting there worrying about, gosh, have we got some surprises? But we are not at this stage going to be providing a full set of accounts for your consideration.
I want Thomas to just provide that.
Thomas may have.
To that, Thomas.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a verbal update of where the result is looking. So you will recall throughout the last 6 months of the year we were forecasting a $700,000 unfavourable variance against budget in our operating position. Very pleasing to say that it's looking like we've come in $500,000 better off than that. So we're looking at only being ending the year 200,000 over budget in the operating area. Capital expenditure wise, we've ended the year pretty much bang on forecast, so we're within $13,000 of achieving that. So as a result of that, we have increased our cash holdings by $500,000 at the end of the year, and we have paid down $1.2 million worth of debt. So it is quite a pleasing result with regards to where we were forecasting to the end of the year. Just to get an understanding of where we're at the process, so the draft document is about 90% complete and just putting the final touches on it this week. The audit team is arriving on Monday and they're starting their 3-week audit program. There's still quite a bit of work being undertaken this week, and that's around mainly reconciliation of the assets. So some of the things that we are looking at doing this week are tidying up the airport asset transfer, all the revaluation. So we have revalued all our stormwater, sewerage and water assets, and we're likely to see an 8 to 10% movement in that area. Accounting for vested assets, and once we've tidied up all the asset components, then we will recalculate depreciation, and that'll be the final touches on this. So that's where we're sitting.
Yeah, oh no, I can do that. Just could you clarify for me, Thomas, is the 200,000 overspend you mentioned a variance from the budget?
Yes, that'll be 200,000 above budget. However, 500,000 better off than forecast. Yeah.
Allow a question each, perhaps. So if you have a question, just try and get all your thoughts into one opportunity. Councillor Srank.
Chair, just in regard to, I understand the date that it was to go to the audit subcommittee was August the 28th. And can I ask why it's around that way and it doesn't come to council first? Why the need to go to the subcommittee?
Sorry, the subcommittee was cancelled. So
I know,
yes,
I know. So it
yes.
hasn't gone. I'm very aware of that. But is it still going to be in that order? That's my question. And when will that happen?
That's correct, Madam Chair. That is the order. It is common practice, I think, for the first cut of the annual report following the audit to go through the Audit and Risk Committee to understand where the result is and what the issues are and get on top of that. And that will be, once that's gone through that process, the draft will be released fairly quickly to Council via the Operations and Monitoring Committee.
And the date? I know you said October to Council, but what about the Audit and Subcommittee? 24th of September.
Not on that issue, but I do have another urgent matter to raise.
Your request for urgent business?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to raise the issue that at the last council meeting, a request was made by Councillor Sturt and myself to be given copies of the briefing papers that were supplied to the consultants over the city focus. I would like to know when councillors will be given those copies, please.
That's a follow-up, really, isn't it? Have we got that information, or we can find it out? We will find that out. And when can we find it out by? Yeah, today we'll find it out, and you'll make sure they're given today to Councillors Kent and Sturt. Yeah. JP will. Oh yeah. Okay. those who want it, it will be given to you. Yes, is it on the same matter, Councillor Bentley?
It is, Madam Chair, and that when I made a request that we have a fourth option regarding the focus, Mr. Gaston said that was a possibility, but it hasn't come to fore, and I want to know why not.
It's not really. I think that can come up through, this can come up through our operational report, these sorts of things. We've got plenty to get through, and I think you'll find that they're not really urgent business, but they can be dealt through today. So the staff have heard your request, and we'll make sure it's answered through the meeting today. All right, so you can reserve the right to ask that question again. Okay? Yes, is yours urgent business, councillors? We have lots of urgent business
Because
today, don't we?
I can't find through the operational report where this matter relates to this committee, and I don't know whether it does or not. But, Madam Chair, there's been a proliferation of signs going up around the city, yellow and black with a big question mark on it. I don't think they're permitted. And it really riles me when the Malfoy Primary School, of which I'm on the reunion committee, were told by staff that they could not put their signs up for the reunion until 6 weeks prior to the union, wherever every other reunion around the Rotorua district has years to put these
Okay,
up.
thank you, Councillor Stewart. I will deal with that, and perhaps because it's it's got quite a bit involved and there hasn't been any heads up to staff, I'll put that to the end of the agenda at this point, and we will deal with it at that point. Thank you, because it is an operational matter. You're quite right, it comes to this committee. So we'll move on now with our agenda. So could someone please confirm the minutes of the 22nd of July? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Oh, no, I came up with a new name. It was going to be Kurt. That's all right, Councillor Gould, seconded Councillor Rotorua Tate. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for that. Sorry about that. It just sort of came in my mind there. Right. Could someone move that we receive the operational report for today? Yep, Councillor Maxwell, seconded Councillor Tapsell. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, would you like to introduce this report, Jeff?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The certainly the operations report this month is actually quite detailed, like our previous ones. What we would like to do as normal practice is largely to take the report as read and then move to ask staff to actually provide highlights as to the various activities that they wish to bring forward to you. If you have, though, any questions as to specifics, then I'd ask that you actually raise those, obviously, through the chair for staff to answer as we're actually moving through the report. So at this point, we'd like to pass back to the chair and for the Group Manager Strategy Policy to actually provide an overview of his area.
Good. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, just if I can probably just, we just established what had happened to the brief, so it's actually on my head on that one. So I had received a copy of the brief and just checked with Portia about the brief. I thought I was being CC'd into the brief that was being passed on to the two councillors who had requested it, but actually it was being passed to me to pass on to the councillors. So I have that in my email, so I can send that out immediately after the meeting, councillors. So apologies for that. Councillors, the other question around the options, I think the issue that we have here, and I tried to answer it off when it was raised, was what we've got in front of the community at the moment is three concepts. So they are nothing more than three ideas based on a brief, and we're going to get the community's feedback about whether they like any of those specific concepts or parts of those specific concepts. What I had answered off for councillors at the time was that when that consultation comes back, the option is for council not to proceed or to choose to proceed with parts or elements of that. So that's why there's a question out there. What we've got in front of them at the moment is three concepts.
Only take a question on this part because I'm aware that Portia has got a presentation to give us, and I'll just allow that at this point. Councillor Bentley.
I'll wait till Portia does the business.
Oh, no, it's fine, because hers is really on the inner city parking update, so I'm quite happy for you to ask your question.
So when you're given the three options that we have at the moment, Mr. Gaston, where is the status quo option going?
Madam Chair. Well, I think we're using the wrong terminology. We always said these were concepts. This isn't an option going up for...
Really a point of...
Well, it's very...
Okay, order, thank you. I rule on this, thank you, councillor Serink. It isn't a point of order, I agree with that. It's not a point, it's an explanation, but thank you for raising it. I'll let Jeff answer that if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, there is an issue of meeting procedure here, and we do have it come up from time to time where individual councillors make comments which are put forward as assertions of what should be. Now, the problem that staff have is, are those assertions the views of an individual councillor, or are they the collective decision of council? Now, this is where we have to invariably make judgments. Now, we were not aware that council had made a collective decision to actually propose to the community 4 options which included the status quo. We were under the understanding that what was going out were concepts, not options. So that is how we're operating. I'd also extend this comment to requests from individual councillors, is that we try very hard to capture requests from you, and where those are able to be undertaken simply and without a large degree of cost, then we will do so. But during the meeting process, one of the things that I think that staff will need to be doing, and I will certainly be looking at this, is to be very clear that where those requests will actually incur significant time and cost to this organisation, then it should be a collective decision as to whether that request is actually followed up. So it's your decision as to whether or not individual requests are followed, if it is significantly is going to impose a high overhead to the organisation. So, if you like, this is a matter of meeting principle and meeting process. So what I'm saying is that on this particular issue, we went out with 3 concepts.
Just have to add to Mr. Williams is that I don't recall at that meeting that anyone put a recommendation that we would go for there was no mover and seconder, I don't recall, that we would stay with add status quo as an option. All right, so we don't want to spend a great deal of time on this. There's a few questions, however. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I suggest that in future, when these requests from councillors are actually put forward, they actually be included in the minutes instead of the very brief minutes that we're actually receiving now, and then maybe these things wouldn't get overlooked.
There still had to be a mover and a seconder if we were all going to support that. Councillor Sturt.
I'm just a little bit confused because as part of the debate, I raised the issue, staff put a report in front of us based on designs and concept plans, and the concepts came up, or the whatever you want to call them, the label doesn't matter. They were given brief outline of what was required in terms so that they could come up with a concept. But Madam Chair, the problem I've got, and I think where Councillor Bentley is coming from with the 4th option, they've got these 3 big glass bowls and people are putting in, so when they come back to this table, they'll say the overwhelming support was for option 2, say. So how can those who don't want to change have an impact and say they don't like option 2?
That's the question. So, right, I will let Portia answer that, but I really don't want to go on about this too much. It's not. We've had a thorough discussion at the was it extraordinary or full council? We've had it. We're just clarifying a few things. I'll let Portia answer that, and then I'd like to move on. Portia.
So what we have down at the Ideas Store are some forms that people can give their feedback as well, and people are writing down there, if they don't like any of the options, they are writing down in the feedback comments that they don't like the options, or they're also writing down that they can have a combination of the options as well. And you can also do that online. The majority of the comments and the feedback are coming back through those forms, but there are people who come into the store who don't really want to fill in a form, but they're quite happy to vote on one of the options that they like, and they'll pop it in there. But the majority of the feedback is actually coming through the forms. I got about 30 yesterday in total.
Thank you.
So.
All right, so now we'd like you to, if you could go ahead with your presentation, please, on your inner city parking update.
So good morning, and just like to say that I had the unfortunate experience of listening to myself on the live streaming after hours one time and found myself entirely boring, so I promised to become a little bit more interesting for you. So just before we go into the parking update, I want to give you a bit of an update on where the Inner City Focus Group is with their group. So what they've done is, if you haven't heard about the Block Champions, is they've gone out and they've identified 2 or 3 people from every block to become the Block Champions. And it's kind of like a neighbourhood support, but for the inner city. And it just gives them an opportunity to get together as a block and talk about, how can we actually work together? How can we talk about the service lane out the back might be a mess? We can collectively work together to sort that issue out. Or there's a group in Pukewatua Street that are now coming together to have collective advertising as well. So it just helps them work together as a group, and it also gives council the opportunity to go to one person and say, hey, can you get this message out? And also for that block to come back to that one person and that one person to contact us. So it means that I'm not up against 360 retailers calling me on a daily basis. It means I'm working with 30 instead. So we've got a really good group, and they're really dedicated as well. So one of their first jobs, and this was last week, was after the O&M a couple of months ago about the parking options. What we did was we went back to the Block Champions and we said, hey, we need you to go out and talk to your block, get the collective thoughts around what your block and your block retailers think about parking, and then bring that information to us to a workshop. So that means that those Block Champions are actually bringing all of the city's general ideas of what they think on parking. So they came to a workshop and we went over the details of the report that you saw a couple of months ago. So all of the data in terms of the, the occupancy, how long people are staying for, all of that information. And they sat down together and came up with an option. We were quite expecting them to come up with 2 or 3 options and not agree, but they actually all came up with one option that they're all really happy about. You can see in this photo, this is Graham Knox from Knox and Gravers. On his street, he's suffering a little bit because they're not getting the turnover, because it's, I think you can feed the meter for up to 8 hours in that street. Graham went around and met with the lab and understood all of the needs of the businesses in the street and brought that information to us. Again, another group really engaged with the whole process, and just really pleased that they're actually coming up with the option for the city. And so you can see a good group here. We've got Grant Kilby from Now, we've got Ant from the My Barber, Tuck, Dave Prendergast from the Bed Stop, and Colin McPhee there. So a real good group of people. And they held their own meetings to come up with the parking. Some of them did surveys, and some of them actually went face to face to see each other. So this is the option on the parking that they came up with and they collectively agreed to. They all agreed that the the free minutes for 60 minutes was better than the mix of 90 and 60. So they've dropped it down, the free parking down to 60 minutes throughout the city, but they've narrowed it in a little bit. So at the moment the parking goes to the end here, Emma here and Fenton Street, but they've drawn it in a little bit because they understood that we've got businesses like the hairdressers, the Wall, the basement cinema, where people want actually to stay a bit longer and they want to have the opportunity to pay. So they've just pulled it in a little bit, and down in the blue, it's $1 an hour for a maximum of 3 hours. So you still get that turnover, so people can't feed the meter for the whole day and stay there the whole day. They've also extended it up to Help Upper Street and Arawa Street as well, the free parking. So at the moment, the free parking only goes as far as Pukuatua Street. And they've also extended the dollar per hour for a maximum of 3 hours into this block, because at the moment this block is actually $2 for 8 hours. So you can imagine they're not really getting the turnover in there. Hopefully that will encourage the use of our parking building, and they've dropped the parking building down to $2 per day for concession holders and $4 per day for casual. And now this reason is because private car parks that people can lease off street are actually ranging between $15 and $17 per week. And so at the moment, if you were to pay a weekly rate in our parking building, it's about $23 per week. So that just puts it on a level playing field. So the next steps on this is that we're going to go to public consultation on this option to see what the wider public think of this, because at the moment, this is the retailers who have come up with it, and taking into consideration their customers as well. But we need to get a bit wider on that consultation. So from Monday, we have 4 weeks of consultation, and we can put that in the ideas store, online, down in the customer centre, all sorts of opportunities to give feedback. Then we're going to analyse that response and make any amendment depending on what the common theme is that's coming through, and then make a recommendation to SPNF in November. So that's us. I'll bring you back to the map because there may be some questions on the map.
Yes, and we've got a couple here. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question, Portia, through you, Madam Chair, was the $1 an hour for 3 hours. Will the meters take $3, or do you have to come back and feed it for the 3rd hour, or will we, if we go with this, would we replace the meters with pay and display? What's the plan there?
At the moment, we haven't gone into that detail yet. So when we come back to SPNF in November, the recommendation in there will be to do with the parking meters, to do with the pay and display meters, and the actual costs that's going to cost as well.
But the existing meters won't accommodate 3 $1 coins, I take it, so there'd be a cost there.
Excuse me, can you just use the microphone, please? Thank you. Thanks, Stavros.
The meters can accommodate the $3, but also going to use the parking sensors to indicate when the time expiry has arrived.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, terrific engagement there, and but just some concerns that are coming in from those that work and live along opposite QE and Lime Cafe and in that street, that there are a lot of workers now parking there and they're getting into congestion. I know you're trying to cope with the spine and Tutanako Street, but that's a sort of behavioural overflow that happens. Go and park outside QE and then go to work for the day. How can we incentivise those people to move into the parking building, because that seems to be the solution? QE's got a real jam there, Lime's got a jam, it's getting quite congested.
There was a lot of discussion at the workshop around how we get that education, and actually coming up with an education program for those workers to encourage them into the more appropriate places to park. And that's got to do with providing them a map, because a lot of the champions said actually people don't know where the free parking is that they can park as a worker. So that's something that we can do. We can start a bit of a campaign to get that information out there to the workers and give them their options.
Chair, 2 questions. One, Amahir Street, you haven't got any yellow going down there. Is that deliberate? because you feel at the present time that the meter system on the other side of the road works, and on the other side you've got the bus stops. Is that correct?
Yes, so the parking in this map actually goes much wider than this. So it goes, it goes all the way down to Hinamaru, Amahia, Rannoch, Fenton Street. So all of the remaining will remain as status quo. The block champions didn't believe that there were any issues on those streets, so they were quite happy for it to remain as status quo.
Second question, Hinamaru Street, I had an approach by a retailer at 12 minutes past 9 this morning. He said, why don't you pull up the cycleway paving things and let 27 car spaces go there? You will reduce your cost of parking by 700,000. Your indication on the map indicates yellow lines, which to me indicates it free for a maximum of 60 minutes. Yet on one side of Hinamaru Street, there's no parking at all.
Yes, so Hinamaru Street has the central parking on this section here, the central parking as well as the parking up on the northern side. So what they're showing here, just very generic, is that it's 60 minutes halfway down the block and then the pay starts. So that means if you're trying to get to Ant's hairdresser, you can, and you're maybe staying for a longer barber appointment, you can actually pay here. And then, or if you're just popping in, you can pop into the 60 minutes for free as well.
Didn't answer my question. Obviously, the cycleway, the road length is going to stay. The retailer had in mind that the cycle should go on the footpath, as the footpath is not being used at the present time, and it'll free up a lot more parking in Hinamaru Street between Fenton Street and Tatanakai Street.
I think probably Councillor Gould, they could feed that through to the Ideas store when it opens. I'm sure there'll be lots of anomalies that come up or different people's thinking. So when we go to the consultation, I think that will be, if people approach you, say, please go and make your concerns known to the Ideas store when we open that for consultation. I think that's the best way for us to capture everyone's ideas. Right, moving on, we've got Councillor Sturt, Maxwell and then Councillor Kent.
Madam Chair, I'm delighted with the champions idea. I've had contact from 3 different block champions who are absolutely delighted that they were even asked to be involved, and they did share with me some of the issues that are here today, and I actually think they have a lot of they'll get a lot of support for it. The reality is, outside our company in McDowell Real Estate, people can pay $2 and park all day, and yet it's right across the road from a movie theatre that relies on that passing trade. So what's happening is the off-street parking, we are having to engage tow trucks to take people out of our private car park. So I think this is a sensible solution. It cuts down that 8 to 3. But the other thing is that the people in the yellow indicated area are the main culprits for parking $2 for 8 hours in the other areas. So there needs to be a mind change there as well. So I look forward to this going out to the general public for consultation. I believe there could be an opportunity to extend this area. I agree with Councillor Gould, and also the issue of parking. I wondered if we could put it to the champions, Madam Chair. We've been looking for a parking review in this CBD for a long, long time, particularly, and I talk about it every meeting, the middle parks, the parks in the middle, and it would alleviate the issue that Councillor Gould is talking about in the Daily Post block. If we took those middle parks out, yes, we've lost 29 and we won't get them back, but the concept of the green corridor has got to be supported and given time to work. What I understood we were going to look at was look at the options of taking out those middle parks in Hinamaru Street, putting the parks back in front of the Trust Bank, that block Hinamaru to Fenton, so that people could, people can actually park out adjacent or in front of the green corridor, which is the example in Hope Upper Street, and it looks great. It hasn't changed the major configuration of the road. The road boom is still wide enough. So I just wondered, Portia, if that was maybe an issue that, to give them another another set of ideas to come up with, because there has been considerable public comment. And I don't want a negative comment about the Green Corridor. I believe it's innovative, and it's got to be given time to work. So I just wondered whether that's an issue that we need to take to these champions.
Either of you like to respond to that, or? I think we'll have a think about that. So are we, what, yeah. Did you want to respond to that, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Your Worship. Your Worship.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair. Well, it wasn't Your Honour.
No, we got that.
Look, you're making some very good comments, and I know that there are discussions also with the inner city retail group with respect to parking more broadly and the number of parks that we actually have in the inner city, and the need potentially to significantly extend those. Now, we're not going to be able to do that with normal changing the way the streets look, but I think it is actually nevertheless an important second stage discussion that we now need to have to say, how do we configure our parks on the streets going forward, and then secondly, how can we look at options for increasing the number of parks actually more broadly available in the inner city. So that is going to be a very definite discussion that will happen next.
Good, all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Portia, I'm really pleased how valuable that Champions Workshop turned out, because it's really highlighted for me that good progress in our inner city. The question I have is, I'm curious about the shift of the big bus stop from Pukuatua Street to Aroa Street. How's that working out, or is it still too early to call?
So what the change in the bus stops did was it moved the people around the city. So predominantly the people were getting off at Pukuatua Street and walking down to Rotorua Central. And then they'd have to walk back from Rotorua Central up to Pukuatua Street to get out. What the bus stops do provide is more opportunities to get off and on the buses at the locations that they want to go to. So dropping off at Aroa Street, people are going to the library, people are coming into town from there. Dropping off at Rotorua Central, people can walk up to the library and get on their same bus and get out, so they don't have to get those big distances around the city. I think what it has also done is it's highlighted the amount of bus users to people. So down in Pukuatua Street, it was quite hidden. Unless you drove down there, you wouldn't see how many people were there. So a lot of people are saying, I didn't realise how many people caught the bus. And I think that's actually encouraging more people to use the bus. And, they like the atmosphere of the new bus stops and they feel a bit safer, yeah.
The champions of those streets, like Aroa Street and Pukuatua Street, are they happy with the changes?
Yes, they are. And we also have another 20 car parks going into Pukuatua Street where the bus stop's being taken out, yeah.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see this as encouraging, firstly, and we're actually listening to what people want for a change, which is a very positive move. Having had some discussions on the subject with some of those parties, one of the issues that concerns me is whether we're putting enough emphasis on the office worker requirements around the city, bearing in mind that a lot of these shops actually have empty premises above them, which are suitable only for offices. And the only reason they can't let them is because there's no parking suitable for office workers adjacent to the CBD. There was some discussion a while back about looking at potentially sites where earthquake strengthening was going to mean buildings were going to be coming down. Have we had any progress on that with a view to perhaps looking for providing more long-term parking arrangements to accommodate that sort of thing?
Do you want to answer that? I'll let Jeff answer that if you don't mind.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's what I was alluding to before. I think one of the next discussions is certainly how can we extend the inner city parking through acquisition potentially of buildings. That's probably not something necessarily though that we as council would necessarily undertake by ourselves. But we have had though a number of discussions with current building owners who have got aspirations that this may be something that they would be willing to look at. It's early days though.
Supplementary, if I may, Madam Chair. Just on that topic, perhaps council officers might like to give some thought to perhaps reviewing under the plan. I understand that CBD premises that are redeveloped don't have to provide any form of parking, which I find absolutely amazing. It's the first city I've ever come across in the world where new building developments in the CBD don't actually have to provide parking for their staff, if not for their customers. So perhaps that could be rolled into this review.
No, I think Dave.
Look, it's not unique, and certainly not unique in provincial cities. One of the quandaries with it, and it's partly where you go. Typically, the land in the CBD is the most expensive land you have in the district, and it was the balance in terms of getting that we actually want in a city development, right? And having to provide parking for workers and so on in the CBD is actually a barrier to CBD development. And effectively within that, that was part of the trade-off in terms of making that call, that there's a lot of parking on the street, there's a parking building in there. Once you get down to that element, it makes it more difficult, and council has been working to make it easier for developers to develop.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Okawate.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just on that last issue that Dave responded to, I was in Seattle a couple of months ago, and there for any development, because I visited City Hall and then was shown around the area, and if you have to, you do have to provide car parks, but that can be anywhere in the city if you're going to do a development, because most of the inner city car parks are already exhausted in terms of numbers. So you're right, it's not unique. But can I just say that yesterday afternoon I spent an hour with one of the block champions, and the feedback that I got was very, very positive. Those champions now, and according to him, they have the opportunity to actually look at other issues that they might like to bring to the attention of council, not necessarily in this area. The person that I was talking to yesterday is responsible for 27 businesses. He has gone head to head, he has visited 24 of those, which I thought was great. But the one thing I want to feedback and ask a question of you, Portia, is that he said he felt that we were starting to overcomplicate the parking issues for our city. He said, that's one thing he said, and he said, this is a shared plan, what we've got here, and they put a lot of thought and effort into it, and he was hoping that we wouldn't stuff it up. So I wanted to know if I could have a look at that consultation one that you just put up, the next steps. Could I just have a look at that? So the public consultation, it's that one that you've just put up there, that will go out? Is that the one that's going to go out to consultation? Okay.
Yes, that's right. So that plan will go out to consultation, and we'll get the feedback from the wider public as well. Whether it may look different next time I come back to see you at SBNF in November, because it depends on that feedback that comes back.
Right.
But you're right. One of the first principles, so right at the start of the Block Champions, we talked about the principles for parking and that it needed to be simple and easy to understand, which is why it's very broad brush. And they also recognise that they're not going to keep, everyone's not going to be happy. We can't try and keep everyone happy, otherwise it will get complicated and it will not be simple across the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just that the wish from particularly that person, but I presume from the others as well, is that not to overcomplicate it and keep it simple. Thank you.
Councillor Sring.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's noted here that the green corridor design for Haupapa Street has been amended to address community feedback. Can you tell me what has changed? I know the original plan, but it seems to me that the middle parking was taken out and now it appears to cars have now parked back in there again. I've had 1 or 2 phone calls about it and I've been unable to answer the question, so can somebody explain to me what the amended Haupapa Street is?
Councillors, remember we talked about this, I think it was at the last meeting it was raised as to what was happening with Haupapa Street. What the decision there was, and I explained to you that as we were just about to commence the construction, when we had a couple of the property owners there raise some concerns, we then took that opportunity to go back and talk to every single one of those property owners or the operators in that space. Portia undertook that with Councillor Hunt, and we got back a range of issues and concerns, and if you'll recall I described to you one of those, which was the incident where the bus had to reverse back up Haupapa Street, and because a SUV with some bikes on the back was actually blocking the lane. There was other issues around things like turning traffic to try and get to the central median parking. So on this basis and across a variety of reasons, we took the opportunity to redesign what was being proposed, to move away from the central parking and to put the parking on that side of the road up against the green corridor. So that gives the opportunity, certainly for vehicles like that bus, to safely almost overtake into the other lane to get around something like an SUV with bicycles on the back. So that's led to the change. So councillor, if you're seeing people parking in the middle or parking on the side, that is just because we're in the construction phase. So the construction is trying to move systematically through that street to minimise the disruption, but the parking has been moved from the original concept or design to being up against the green corridor on that side of the road.
Okay, well, I think we'll have the last question from Councillor McVicker. Very much aware we've got a huge agenda to continue through.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, if I may, the demand that each street has created for parking, for Kawi Street, etc., why have you not taken up any changes in that area?
We are aware that there is quite a lot of demand up in Whakaui Street and Pukaki Street. One of the challenges that I'll have for the next 4 weeks is to get around all of those businesses to ensure that they get their feedback into the consultation as well. Our block champions, well, we've got about 20 or 30 of them. We don't have every single block covered at the moment, so we're still looking for volunteers to cover those blocks and to get their feedback into it. But I do need to get around those businesses to see what their feedback is as well on the parking option that's presented to them.
And just a brief question from me. When we come to strategy, policy and finance in November, will we have further information? I know you haven't discussed it already with the block champions or anyone else, but will we have further information about whether we're going to have pay and display or meters? Because I believe that will come up. And I would just like to remind us all that a lot of this started when we put the pay and display in, and people attracted the $40 fine, and people voted by staying out of the city. Can we make sure that's addressed, please?
So the recommendation in November will be the final recommendation on the parking overall, and so that will be brought back to you in November with all that information.
Thank you for that. And I would just remind everyone that we have got public consultation 7th of September to the 2nd of October. And apart from the ideas shop, people can also go to our website and comment online. So you don't actually have to go into town if you don't want to. Thank you very much for your presentation today, Portia. All right, JP, would you like to highlight anything else on your report? There's quite a bit here. So.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Probably there's two issues that I'll just ask Amy to highlight, and then just in concluding, I've got one extra issue that wasn't identified in the report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that relate to the other things we've raised here.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay, I was just two, I guess, highlights to raise out of the report, really. One was just a comment on how we're tracking with the application for funding for mobile black spot and for rural broadband. So we put our application in, I think it was a month or so ago, and just the next step for that is to us to submit on the 18th of September a digital enablement plan. So that's essentially some short-term actions that we intend to take really around driving, digital enablement in our district. A part of that will be the undertaking to develop a digital strategy by the beginning of next year. So we will be working or continuing to work with our business community, with our other organisations within Rotorua Lakes Council, with their needs and so on, like the museum and the library, etc., to develop a digital strategy, and probably about early February be coming back with that. But prior to that, we should get a decision in November on whether or not we've been successful around that mobile black spot and the rural broadband application. It's my understanding with the time frame. So just wanting to let you know about that. Just the other point was just to comment on, which is obviously a major piece of work that my team is working on at the moment, is the district plan appeals. So I just wanted to, highlight that we are really still tracking on at a really good rate on the district plan appeals. So we've now got 82% of points resolved. So that's tracking quite far ahead of the court's, what were quite demanding expectations. So that is going well. Of the appeals, we've got 15 of the 37 completely resolved, and the remaining appeals, a lot of them are just sort of 1 or 2 points, which we are still to get consent orders written up and so on for. So doing really well in terms of trying to get that whole district plan completed so we can create that certainty in terms of the new plan for the district.
And councillors, not included in this report, but it's very fresh for us, is we've just got our next Infometrics report. So we use that just to track what's happening with our GDP and other sort of key indicators for the district. And I suppose what's come through there, which is very exciting for us, is that we've had the highest GDP increase in the country for the March to June quarter. So that was at 4.3% compared with last year, so that's the increase. So we were atop of the league table for the Infometrics report. So a very positive outcome for us, and really that's been on the back of some really good trends that we're seeing through in visitor guest nights. You know, obviously you've had a lot of information about the tourism numbers and the guest nights, which for the year are showing up by 8.6%. We've also got, and you would have seen it clearly in the paper over the last few weeks or months, has been the number of residential property consents have been upwards of 17% increases on previous year as well, and the same figure increase around home sales. So some really good indicators coming through there, which has really culminated in that second quarter GDP figure for us. So I think that was circulated to you all, and it's also been put on our Facebook at the moment. So it's getting out there, and obviously it's quite a significant increase, and puts us ahead of, I think it was Wellington or Christchurch, who were second and third in that table as well.
That's amazing news, I have to say. I think it's wonderful, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Will we have a report, that Infometrics report at the next operations and monitoring, so we can actually see that information for ourselves?
Yes, well, so the intention is to do a full quarterly report on all of the 2030 goals. So that the reason we buy the Infometrics report on a quarterly basis is to, get some of those key economic measures. So that report will be ready for the next O&M in terms of in its entirety around how we're tracking for 2030. I'm happy to circulate, or will be online as well, the actual econometrics quarterly report. That's no problem. We can send that out probably, the next day or so.
That would be great, because it's good to see those excellent results coming forward already. It's fantastic news. All right, Councillor Sturt, then Mick Vicker.
General question, and maybe CEO or JP can ask, but it's a hot topic at the moment, and in Parliament they'd have a snap debate on it, but I just wondered when we will be advised of the arbitration decisions that have been agreed to. You said that 80-odd% had been agreed to, in particular with regard to the lifestyle segment. with relation to the nitrogen budgets, because there was criticism levelled at us by Environment Bay of Plenty that their goals and our LTP, not our LTP, our district plan did not coincide with the goals that they had in mind in terms of land use change. So I just wondered, there was a major appeal made, and I just wondered if there was an opportunity for you, I mean, if it's still confidential, I understand that, if an update on whether that had been agreed, and if it had been agreed, are you at liberty to advise us what the agreement was? Because I think there is a lot of people waiting in the wings to find out what's going on in terms of that particular area.
Sure. So just a bit on the process. So mediations remain confidential from the general public in terms of the whole sort of mediation process and how it works without prejudice and so on, until we've actually signed a consent order and the judge has actually signed that. So as soon as we're getting signed consent orders, we're putting them on our website so they're available for people to see. In terms of updating the plan to a new, completely clean version, we're going to wait till we've actually got through all of them, because trying to do it as we go, actually, you have consequential amendments that happen and things, and it's not the most efficient way. But as to your specific question, I'm happy to cover that in off in the confidential section later today. I think there is a comment in there in the report covering it, but I can take that question a bit later if that's acceptable.
Yeah. The Infometrics report, is that Rotorua specific or Bay of Plenty?
It's Rotorua specific.
That's good. That's good. And also, if I can add, on page 15, the consent, good to see some information there as to the makeup of the various applications that we've received. And I would still like to suggest that new buildings, which represent 36% of the total, should be the medium by which we measure our success in that particular industry, because as we know, larger buildings, construction works, etc., vary substantially up and down from year to year. So handy to have that information. Thank you.
Councillor McVicker, if there was any response, I'd wait and ask Dave when we get to his part of the report, because it's covered off in... Yes, I know it can be confusing, and I understand that's a real passion of yours. You've always been very focused on consents. Yeah, so JP's part goes up to page 14 just before performance and delivery, and then it's into Dave. So just if you want to, if there's any comment, but good points noted. Councillor Rokawate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 14 under planning, and it's around the National Environmental Standard for Plantation Forestry. And I see that where we're going, and the proposed changes that have been put there by the Ministry for Primary Industries. I'm interested in our feedback that we're going to provide. Obviously, because we've got forests in this area, and of course within the region, significant forests. But is our input, or is our feedback going to have input from our foresters as well, so that it's an informed one based on actually some of the realities should this proposal go through? I think this is quite a significant change, and it could well affect our foresters in the area.
Madam Chair, it's a very good point, and we will try and do that. There's a quite an effective network that has been built up through Grow Rotorua, so obviously we're plugging into that just to make sure that we're getting that feedback before we lodge any comments on that documentation. So yes.
Councillor Kent and Gould, just questions just on JP's part of the report, if you could stay with that at the moment. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 13. Just querying the decision made not to create a formal steering group under the economic growth portfolio. I thought the whole objective of forming the steering group was actually to give us a steer as to what actually needed to happen in the city to promote some growth. This has been going on for over a year now, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere at all.
Well, we've just had a few reports that said that we are growing, but having said that, meant Amy or Dave? Amy?
I think we've thought sort of quite hard about this in terms of the role of the steering group and how that would be made up. And when we sort of went through and said, right, well, how do we get the right people, the right mix of all of our different industries sort of on there, we ended up with a very, very quite a long and extensive list. And we thought, well, are we going to get what we need in terms of the way that we need it from this group? So what we've actually said is actually we would be more effective if we had some smaller subgroups on particular topics. So actually around the tourism area, pulling together some kind of key thinkers in that space, obviously leveraging Destination Rotorua's board and so on there. There's also the other element of that, we do have boards that exist in our CCO, so in terms of overlapping with the feedback and the roles that they play, so it is quite a complicated space. Business attraction, for example, we want to get, I guess, a key group of thinkers around that, but some industries, I guess, sort of will turn off when they're talking about industries that aren't related to them necessarily as well, so it's been a bit of a challenge. We decided we would go with some smaller sort of subgroups rather than, and sort of pick off the appropriate people to feedback on things rather than doing one macro steering group.
So, Dave, did you want to, as portfolio lead, make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just to add to what Amy said, it has been challenging because these are all busy people that were, as with all the steering groups, I'm sure, who we're asking to contribute their time. And unless it's a particular area that they have an interest in, so a good example is the digital strategy, great engagement from people around that. Not a formal group established, but the networking occasion at Now Communications was well attended by a wide range of people in the digital space and very interested in that. And so, you know, it's horses for courses, I think. And just while we're on the digital strategy, councillors may be interested, they will have all have got the LGNZ policy brief on the 1st, I think it was, of this month, which confirmed that Rotorua fringe areas are in the list of tenders that MBIE have sent out for ultra-fast broadband. So, yep, it's coming along well, that one.
Just if I can just add to that, I think the economic development space for Rotorua is a very interesting one, and I think as was actually pointed out by the chair, the results that we're seeing from Rotorua and the infometric results actually speak volumes that Rotorua is making not just significant progress, but outstanding progress. In my view, that progress is actually being assisted by the range of a lot of people who are very focused at the moment. We have Grow Rotorua, which is actually working on a number of initiatives and really are at a point where they have managed to capture not only some very worthwhile concepts and business cases, but also have investors in behind them. We also have the work that's, for example, going on with the airport, with DRM Marketing, who has a audacious goal of $1 billion sitting in behind it. That work is fueling, obviously, tourism, and you can see with regards to the infometrics measures how that is actually making a major difference with regards to Rotorua's economic performance. The list goes on, actually. The strategy group themselves have actually got a lot of work that they are looking at. For example, the inner city developments that are happening, all actually aligned to economic development, as do the work that we'll come to a little bit later on with regards to not only the district plan but the consenting approach. So all of these are activities that are all aligned to driving economic development. What we're very aware of is that we didn't want to, in the portfolio space, effectively disrupt some very worthwhile and some very active focuses that are actually occurring at the moment, and to reconsolidate into a new mode which may or may not actually effectively add value. So we've been very careful about saying, how do we actually coordinate, how do we actually take a longer term perspective, and I think the Deputy Mayor has actually mentioned that where we go next is actually a longer term view. So what will be happening is over the early next year, as we're concluding the reviews, for example, of Grow Rotorua, we will be looking at saying, how do we take the next step forward? What is the next iteration of how we fuel this growth that we've already achieved at the next level?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report. When you talk about the district plan, and you're talking about percentage-wise, what's the numbers of those which haven't been settled? And do you anticipate, I'm being positive now, do you anticipate that most of those will be settled within the next 3 months?
So there's 82% have been resolved, so 18% remaining that are unresolved. At this point, we've only got one appeal, which looks like it's going to go to hearing. As we stand, so I guess the intention would be hopefully within the new year. We sort of started in March, and we gave ourselves a 12-month time frame to get through. I think it was 90% was what the court wanted, so I'm very confident we'll hit that target, and we will be tracking very well as a district in terms of our performance around that.
10%, what's the total number, please?
I think we had 37 appeals.
Yes, and about just over 200.
So, and I think the issue that Councillor Sturt raised before was that generally there was only one or two ones that had an influence over significant portions of the district, and we've made extremely good progress on those, and that's very important. So what we're expecting and what Amy has signalled is that with the one that's at this stage looking like it might go to court, we're site specific. So that's a very positive outcome for the district and certainty around the district plan moving into that operative space. So it really, that's the ambition we have, is to keep the number as small as possible, get that plan operative and get that certainty out there for our community. And at this stage we're dealing specifically with that as a collective, so we should have a very clear set of rules for the plan. And if we go to court, it will be only about site-specific issues.
Had a question on page 13 under the economic growth portfolio. Remind me, please, I noticed the Grow Rotorua funding agreement has been signed. Can you remind me what the input from ratepayer money is? I've heard a couple of different figures, and I'm just curious to see what it really is.
So it was as we presented to yourselves, which was 700,000 for Grow Rotorua. Just for this following year while we're doing the review in terms of how we want to structure our economic development services.
And Madam Chair, that represents a $100,000 cut in their budget.
I think this general discussion leading on from the economic development portfolio is probably the path that all the portfolios are going to take, and rather than having concentrated advisory groups, which are essentially volunteer people who are busy people in the fields that we have portfolios in, they're like the major piece of work in our sport and recreation is our strategy, which will be presented at the next meeting, at Metapeka's meeting. But at the end of the day, I see the advisory group somewhat devolving its responsibilities. We'll have a strategy to work towards, and we will bring the key people together. And I haven't spoken to Rob about this, but I certainly, this is where my thinking is, and I'm sure it's around this table as well, that if we've got a site-specific issue that needs developing or growth, for example, the collaboration down at the hockey turf, with the collaboration of the golf club, the hockey people, the sport and the athletic people down there, the cricket association, we will get the parties together for that particular issue. We've got the strategy behind us, why people come to Rotorua, what we want to do in terms of our goals and that sort of thing. And because in the economic development area that Dave was involved in, I was very sceptical, as I think you were, Madam Chair, about where Grow Rotorua was heading, its direction, and its. I think that's been realigned. I think we're going through a review. I think we need to give that open space in terms of its direction, because there are some great things happening out there, but we also need to keep those messages going out to our community about the specifics on what they're achieving and why they're achieving it, who's involved, and because there's a mountain of work that I know is going on behind the scenes that you're doing, Dave, that needs to, that will have results. They're just time consuming, but we've also got the CCOs. We need to focus on the CCOs in terms of what they're going to bring to the table in terms of performance and economic growth and development as well. So I just hope you know, we don't rush into things, but we get the right information so that we can make the right decisions in either supporting these outcomes or not. And I look forward to that.
I think that's a very good way to phrase some of the questions and answers, is that they are ever changing, the portfolios, and we need to be open to change and not believe that just steering group is going to be there forever, or we don't want to waste people's time, as you've pointed out already. So thank you for that, Your Worship.
Yes, a comment on Grow Rotorua and their involvement in the regional growth strategy. That's at the point of going to be announced at the end of this month, and Grow Rotorua have been very active in there about spa health and wellness and wood, which are our two key economic drivers, and on the result of that we're already seeing the results with the flash packer announcement and the Ramada development down at the lakefront. But we're well in there, and I'm in that group as on the governance group. So, you know, they're working very, very hard. When you think Grow Rotorua is a staff of 2, we're having amazing results, and you link that to the Infometrics result, and it's an astonishing record. So you will all be invited, I'm sure, to the launch of the regional growth strategy too at the end of the month.
I'm sure we look forward to that invitation. On that note, thank you very much, JP and Amy. And I just would like to say, Amy, that I want to congratulate you and Paulina and the staff that are involved with those district plan appeals. I think you're doing an amazing job, and I know those are truly excellent results that I, for one, didn't expect in such a short time frame. So thank you very much. All right, so can we now move on to the performance and delivery group in the capable hands of Mr. Foster? And we'll let you go through your group. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors, through you, Chair. Look, we've got a couple of presentations. So we've got Rob here who'll give us a presentation in terms of what's happening in the sport and rec space. Also, we've got Stavros and Ian Cryer here who'll give an update with the council in terms of where we're at with the solid waste strategy and the community consultation and the next steps in around that. Going through the report, we have. I won't go through it all. We've got statistics in there as had been requested. Paul's here if there are any questions in regards to the statistics. Pretty busy month across the board. You'll notice in terms of here, I won't go through everything within here. Museum is going incredibly well. It's shoulder season in terms of, or low season in terms of tourism, but the numbers going through the museum are up around about 12.5% for both July and August. We've just recently had the August numbers are up again by similar sorts of levels. Around the property sales, just heard yesterday that last month, just closed, we processed 100 LIM reports. That's the first time we've gone over 100 LIM reports in a month. That gives an idea of the sort of trading activity that's going on in regards to property selling, which has been reflected again around this table. Geothermal bores. So we're working through with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council about geothermal bores, and they've done an audit of those and what they look like. There's certain issues there that the organisation will work through in regards to those. Just a bit of an update for the councillors. One, of course, went. It was a sealed off bore. It was underneath one of the stormwater pipes in one of the servicing lanes in the CBD. That has been sealed and closed or fully done. Ran into a few issues in regards to it. It wasn't a council bore, but it was a council responsibility because it was a bore that had been closed off, and the position of the bore, of course, was in the laneway, which is council property. So that cost us around about $40,000 to $45,000 to cap off. Very complicated because there was a bit of a leak partway down the pipe. So whenever they tried to, whenever they do it, they quench the well by forcing cold water down it. Once it cools, then they can seal it off by putting grout down. What they found is when they were trying to force the water down, there was a hole in the casing, around about 12 to 13 metres down. So whenever they forced the water down, it was leaking out the hole in the pipe, of course, being forced out, which actually meant that an outer casing had to be rammed or vibrated into the ground. Once that was done, it was able to then force the water down, quench the bore, and then it was sealed. So that took slightly longer than expected because of the leak in the pipe and the work required to get the specialist equipment in to put the casing in place. But that's now been worked through, and that is sealed. And I'll pass to Rob to do a presentation on.
Let Rob have his presentation and then we'll go to questions on this group after. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and tēnā koutou to the Council. Julianne, I'll just get Julianne Wilkinson to join me as well. Sports and recreation, we have all the open space management. We also look after the aquatic centre. We have the energy events, events and venues has now, as of the 1st of July, come into the sport and rec area, and also Julianne's team leads the community engagement and events, which is a very big part of also what we do in terms of not only having these facilities and areas, we need to encourage people to use them. So there's quite a big role to play in actually helping and facilitating people using these spaces. So I'll go through a presentation. We'll keep it reasonably brief given the time constraints we've got today. This presentation is about how the Sport and Recreation Department and the things that we do fit in towards the 2030 goals, and also how we use the Council's values to deliver on these activities. So when we look at the first goal of a resilient community, thinking about how sports and recreation actually contributes towards a resilient community, which is all about safe neighbourhoods, sense of place, being involved and connected. A key part of communities are their community parks, neighbourhood parks. These areas, playgrounds, we need to make them safe, we need to maintain them. We've moved a lot in the last 12, probably 18 months towards making sure these areas are, SIP-TED assessed. So the old days of putting the toilet block right in the back corner of the playground and throwing a whole lot of trees around it so nobody can see it, those sorts of attitudes have changed, and so we've moved quite a bit in trying to make these areas safer. Another key thing that we've done is also around making sure that people are able to use these spaces. So we've had a number of programs that are heavily involved with communities about encouraging people into these places that we've worked on, and we'll talk about the youth space activity program, which is called free parking, so it's not down the main streets of town. It's all about people getting out into the parks, and it's particularly targeted at youth at-risk groups. Another big one that we've had in terms of that community sort of resilience is a lot of work that we've been doing up at Mamaku lately. Those of you who have been involved, I mean, that's been a 12-plus month process of heavy involvement with the communities to making sure that our contribution to that space is owned by the community rather than us just going and doing it. We've spent a lot of time getting it right so that it's actually community owned. And the other thing, of course, in terms of that resilience is venues and events for community engagement. We've got some particularly big events that happen, like marathons and Weet-Bix triathlons and things like that, that really do encourage a level of community involvement, neighbourhood involvement and resilience. The next goal is quite an easy one to probably create a 10-page list for what sport and recreation are doing towards outstanding places to play. About lifestyles, connections, areas that surround us. Obviously, managing all these spaces. There are over 70 playgrounds. There's many hundreds of hectares of parks and sports fields. So we are able to provide a huge range of opportunities and areas that people appreciate. Another thing that we're also focusing on is making sure that we have the right level of recreational and sporting diversity. We don't want to focus all our eggs in one particular area, and we're fortunate in Rotorua to have some very unique, high quality natural assets as well in terms of our forests and lakes and things like that. So we are able to leverage off what we are calling now in the strategy space what's uniquely Rotorua in terms of sports and recreation, and that makes it very easy to encourage access to these outstanding places. And also with events and venues, we've got event support, facilitation and management of these spaces as well to encourage use. Moving on to the Vibrant City Heart, our open spaces team are very involved with inner city work. We have a lot of work to do with the plantings and gardenings in the inner city, and we've also, hopefully, you've noticed in the last 12 months, made some pretty big efforts into our premier parks. So Government Gardens and Kurerau Park in particular are two areas that have had some major sort of, I suppose, corrections done where we've lifted the bar in those areas, and also our aquatic centre and our venues very associated with the inner city, and of course the major events as well. A lot of them encourage people into town and push areas into each street with various event celebrations and things like that. I had to get a fishing picture in there somewhere. Business innovation and prosperity. Sport and recreation activity does support a lot of business innovation in town. We have 48 commercial operators working on our open spaces. We have 100,000 visitor nights associated with major events, of which 40,000 visitors come into the city to participate in those. Those support a lot of businesses around not only the events themselves but some of the key activities. Fishing guides, all sorts of things like that. The number of bike shops in Rotorua per capita exceeds the national average by a long shot, and we've also got a lot of off-spill from the sport and recreation community that helps service all our partners, like accommodation and a lot of, it's a visitor town, and a lot of sport and recreation attracts visitors to this town. In terms of the goal of employment choices, it's probably one of the 2030 goals that is lower in the contribution that sport and recreation make. That's all about about training and employment opportunities. While we do have employment opportunities directly associated with the sport and recreation activities that happen in the town, there's a limited amount of education that goes with it, although Wairiki Academy of Sport is working in those areas, and we're now just in the process of developing further with the Mountain Biking Centre of Excellence. So Cycling New Zealand has set up the Road and Track Centre of Excellence in Cambridge. They are looking to support a mountain biking coaching position in Rotorua with a target towards the end of the year of having someone in place to actually develop that whole centre of excellence around the excellent facilities we have here. And also enhanced environment, the goal of enhanced environment. A lot of people come to Rotorua because it does offer a fantastic place for sport and recreation. It's also, a lot of people move and live in Rotorua because of the fantastic sport and recreation opportunities that this uniquely Rotorua catchment provides. So it's intrinsically linked with what we have here, and we're able to promote the natural advantages. So that's some of the activities and how we work in towards those council's goals. In terms of going towards council values and working them into the delivery of the work that we do, and inspiring is one of the council values, taking pride and making a positive difference in what we do. Putting it right is something that has been developing through the staff culture more recently, and we've made some very big efforts in some of our premier open spaces to actually look at those things. It's it's an area where we are able to make a difference to the way people view the city. The NRB survey results that have just come back have shown an increase in resident satisfaction with city landscaping and beautification is now at 98% of residents satisfied. That's more than 10% over the national norm for that figure. It's an increase on last year. People are noticing these steps, and it's the highest ranking level of satisfaction that the council gets across any services. I think it just beats sewerage by 1%. So these things about putting it right are actually being noticed, being appreciated, and we're proud of that. We're proud of the achievements that we've made in that area. The increased community events. We're working very hard with the community to remove barriers for them using these open spaces. It's great if you've got these fantastic spaces, but we really need to make sure that people can use them. So there's been a lot of work going into things like toolboxes, one-stop shops. So when people want to have an event, a community event, and they need to book spaces, they need to sort out rubbish, they need to sort out drinking water, they might want to serve food, rather than making it difficult, we can sort out this. You need to contact A and B and C and D to get your rubbish bins and your water and your license for serving food and things like that. We're able to deliver a whole lot of these things in one-stop shop, and so we're actually working pretty hard on those sorts of toolboxes for actually growing capacity of the applicants. It's something that if we put the effort in now, it's going to provide them with the knowledge to come back and be able to do it better next time. And some of the other things that I would have to say that we're pretty proud of is some of the work that we're doing just with things like our capital program, the toilets and things like that we've just done out at Waipuna and Trout Pool Road, getting the local community involved. Even one of those toilets is on iwi land, is on the Ngāti Pukea Runanga land there by the boat ramp. And so, we've been able to create a relationship there, get a toilet block built, get the local community to decorate it. Those sorts of things, again, transfer that ownership back to the local people, and I think it quite is an inspiring way of approaching some of the way that we are able to achieve these activities. In terms of being helpful, internally across council and externally with the community, we make very big efforts into trying to be helpful. I looked up with Valeta's help the other day. We deal with just under 1,500 requests for service every year. About 40% of those are related to trees. Lots of people have varying opinions about trees. They love them, they hate them, they drop leaves, they want them there, they want them gone. We spend a lot of time dealing with the public on things that actually make a difference. So we do have a lot of work dealing with making things, making things different for people, actually getting out there and helping them. Classic recent example is the firewood in Linton Park. For some of you that might have seen what's happening there, we decided that we needed to get rid of some gum trees in Linton Park. Let's try and open it up and let the community have a go at the firewood. It's been a significantly big job. We could have simply closed the gate and dealt with it and got rid of it, but no, we've been trying to create opportunities for the community to do that. It's been a major, it has been a significant undertaking, but things like that have actually, not only do people have the trees that we're shading the properties removed, they have the ability to access firewood. People who might have said, well, hey, we don't... in fact, we've had very little negative feedback about the trees, basically because we've been able to create opportunities for people to get benefits out of it, rather than just the simple task of taking them down. Another area up there, we've got the boot camps. New and evolving types of activity on our open spaces have required us to be quite dynamic in our thinking and making sure that we can provide capacity for these things, make sure they don't negatively affect other activities that are happening on those workspaces, on those recreational open spaces, and getting people to be able to deliver another opportunity for people in the community. And boot camps is something that during the year we've actually put quite a bit of extra over and above effort into, to making sure that they have the right areas and places for that sort of thing to happen. Oh, killed it, did I? Sorry. In terms of innovation, being solution focused and improvements, it's something that we look at, and simple things like the furniture. We've cut down a whole lot of trees in Tokarangi Forest, and we've turned the big gums that we took out of that into bike logs around the city. We've also taken parts of that and actually had them milled and redone all the seats in government gardens. Things like that we can do that actually make it not only considerably cheaper to deliver on some of that infrastructure renewal work, but also use what were potentially some of the council's almost liabilities in terms of getting rid of them. We've been able to turn it around and make some positive gains in there. We've got things like the fitness trail. We've promoted the ice rink through a competition. The ice rink previously was not cheap to host. We've been able to actually reduce the cost of hosting the ice rink in town, and also encourage them to promote it through schools to get groups that might not normally have the opportunity to come and use something like that to be able to come in and have a competition, drive people in to use it, using the inner city, and actually providing something to groups that we wouldn't normally get. The other thing is the help for the homeless as well as something up there, which is it was previously a group that had been difficult to provide opportunities for, that matched everyone else's expectations of how we can help feeding, the various trusts and things that have been set up to help these groups. We sat back and had quite a few meetings with them and talked across council with property and all that sort of stuff, and we've come up for some solutions for those sorts of activities, which certainly from the last 5 or 6 months of work has shown that they're coexisting with the rest of the community quite happily, and it's meeting the needs of not only them but also everyone else who's using our open spaces.
Mind just a minute, Rob. Of time, we've got one more presentation from Waste and quite a lot to go through, so if you don't mind, just thank you. Sorry about
with the especially with sensitive areas in terms of the way people deal with remembrance and things like that. And of course the last value is all about being engaging, and I think that is something in the last 12 months that significant efforts have made. And much like the block champions, we've actually gone out to our users, to our leaseholders, to various people who use our spaces to make sure that we can get what they want. And the last slide is actually will be relatively quick. It's about the free parking program that Julianne's had a significant role in, and also it encompasses a whole range of these values and how we can show them. So I'll let Julianne quickly go through that.
Certainly, I appreciate from this the breadth of your area that you deal with. It probably would have been better to have had it. It was the only presentation, but having said that, it's really good to get an update. So, apologies that I do have to ask you to move along.
Okay, so I'll just go very quickly through this, but the free parking program or activity on youth spaces, I think is a program that lives and breathes all of the council values. Just a little bit of history is that it was initiated in 2009 as part of creating the youth spaces on our parks in 4 of our communities that were identified as having a need in those areas. So that's Western Heights, Te Kotu, Fordlands and East Side.
So as you know, 3 of those parks were built, and 1 is going to be built in Eastside over the next 2 years. So those parks were built, and that was great, but then of course the youth wanted some inspiration and some encouragement and needed some barriers broken down to actually use those spaces. So that's how free parking was born, and that was named by the youth, by the way, as a term, free use of our parks. So it's inspiring in that I think we partnered with Sport New Zealand. They obviously provided a significant amount of funding because they saw the value of this project to encourage youth to not undertake general physical activity in those parks, to try and transition them into organised sport. And in actual fact, Sport New Zealand used that throughout the country as an example of a program that's been successful. Creating connections, the intent of the program, I guess, was to transition it through from a program that was delivered by a body, being Te Wairiki Pūtea Trust, and they've done a fantastic job with that. But the intent of the project was to transition it into community-led. And part of that process is making sure, in working with those communities who are going to take over that program, to ensure that they've got the capability to do that. So it's not just really about sport and recreation, but there's a very holistic approach to that process. So, looking at other areas where we can support those communities, not just within that program. As part of that approach and transitioning it into community-led, it's meant that we've had to recognise that each of those 4 communities are quite different. They all have different challenges, and they have different people living within those communities. So we've developed partnership agreements, so we're not just handing it over to the community and saying, here, it's yours, go for it. We're actually transitioning it through partnership arrangements with council, and not one size fits all, so we've had to be very individual in our approach to each of those communities. Makoia was the first cab off the rank. I think that's the photo that you can see down the bottom there, where they presented that to the community at a celebration day at Puketawhero Park. So as I said, we've had to be quite creative in the way we've looked at those partnership arrangements to make sure that they work with each of those communities. And we've also said to them that they need to be innovative about how they deliver that program, because youth are constantly changing in their views, and they need to keep up with their views of what's important. Again, as part of that process, our staff have gone out and actually gone out to each of those communities. We haven't invited them here to council, although we do that on occasion, but we've actually gone and met with them on their turf. We've gone out to marae, we've gone out to community associations, we've gone out to the parks, we've gone to the delivery of free parking and talked to youth, so that we've got a really good understanding of the whole picture and being very respectful of the challenges that they face in those communities, so that when we've developed those partnership arrangements, they are meaningful to those communities that we're working with. And engaging, again, we've gone out into those communities, but it's about having a continued relationship with them. It's about accepting the fact that we're transitioning it into community-led. So we're not being prescriptive. We're saying to the community, it's for your community, and it needs to be developed by you to make sure that it's going to be sustainable and that's going to continue to be successful. So the part that we play, I guess, is that we want to be able to provide that continued support, particularly in the area of capability, because we recognise that a lot of these community associations and groups struggle for different reasons, and trying to create connections to provide them with support. As part of that, we're setting up a governance group, which brings all of those communities together, because the aim is that what is successful in one community can help another community. So we're not trying to look at them in isolation, but being as part of the whole Rotorua community, and they can actually work together.
And we're supporting them through that process as well by obviously applying for funding to see the continued delivery of that program. Just a little bit of interest, it is designed and targeted at youth 12 to 20 years old, and there's been some amazing success over the last few years through the delivery from Te Wairiki Pudia Trust. They've had in 2.5 years of that program, they had nearly 10,000 youth be involved with the program across those 4 communities. And some of those youth have gone through into really good leadership roles. One of them got employment with Te Papatakaro as a youth deliverer through that body, and she was identified specifically through the free parking program. And a lot of those youth have now been involved in organised sport. So we've got Piratahi, which is a program that runs within the high schools, Wakaama volleyball. There's the Fordlands Youth Committee, which is being really successful, and particularly the Wakaama, they've competed at national events. So there's some amazing stuff coming out of just simply delivery of sport and recreation opportunity on our youth spaces.
Thank you very much for your update. Thank you, Rob and Julian. We're just open for a few questions. If I can just let you know our way forward of what we've got to get through before the end of the, hopefully by 12-ish, I think. We've got, so a few questions on this, then we've got our waste strategy, then questions on this, then we've got finance. So we've got a bit to get through. So we've got Councillor Rokawa first, then Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Thank you for the very full report. But what I would have liked to have seen there is some recognition to the new and evolving contribution of Māori in this area. And I'm thinking of events, I've noticed the events that you've put up there, but I'm thinking of Te Matatini, be it the regional or the national, if we're so lucky, Wakaama. I'm thinking of Te Papatakaro, the Power Wars. I'm thinking of Iron Māori, and it's noticeable by their absence from the document at all. And I was particularly looking for that because of the health and well-being factor that those events make to a significant sector of our community. So I was a bit disappointed, I have to say, that to me is it's not showing up to any degree.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. Just in response to that, except that we haven't shown it in this presentation, I would say that there is quite a bit going on in that space, and in fact, in the strategy development with what is uniquely Rotorua, the 3 key tenets that we've identified is the cultural opportunities, the forest opportunities and the lake opportunities. And those cultural opportunities and things like the lake are very, based around Wakaama. They've identified that. Te Papatakaro as a deliverer of Te Arawa sports, iwi sports in the Te Arawa area has been very involved with the steering group and made sure of that. So I apologise for it not being in here, but it is something that we have recognised in the development of the strategy at a high level.
I think the threads were there, with all due respect, Councillor Rokawa with Te Wairiki Pudia's involvement in the free parking. I think that is working with people that have previously never been engaged with any sport. So I think it's there, just maybe not in bold. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, to Rob, Julianne, it is a shame that this presentation has to be rushed, because I think it's one of our successful areas, and also to Charles's portfolio. They're doing tremendous things in there. There's just something I would like to touch on. One is, you mentioned earlier, Rob, about removing barriers. And recently we had the very successful New Zealand Brass Bands Championships here. 5 days, many people in here. And congratulations to Councillors Sarek, Andrew and their committee for the good work they've done. I'm thinking about future bids, because I attended many of their events because the executive has some personal friends that are on there. But if we're going to have any successful future bids to have this here, we need to do something about the street march being done in the main street. This is what they spoke to me about. It was because we've changed our roads a lot. It had to be held down at Kuido Park, and the main street is where people get to see it, and it also is a judged area. So please, if we want to be successful in future bids, we've got to do something about getting that back into the main street. That's my main one. Thank you.
Firstly to you, Rob and Julianne, there's a lot of work, and I take your point, Councillor Laukawa. The report isn't specifically detailing Māori because they've been taken on board as part of our whole community in terms of collaboration, the free parking. Most of the youth spaces are targeted in the lower socioeconomic areas, of which predominantly most of them are Māori anyway, but the engagement with Māori sports providers, recreation providers has been huge, and I take my hat off to the team for that. There are a couple of areas that hopefully the strategy will wash up. There is now a group of young people who want to form a skateboarding club, and I noticed online yesterday Napier Hastings just announced an $8 million redevelopment proposal, and it absolutely drop dead gorgeous, be ideal down at Sheep Park. And it would actually, the redevelopment down there, and we need that collaboration from funders. The ratepayers can't afford it, we know that. Would actually tidy up a part of our city that, because of the east-west link and the Victoria Street bypass, has been an area that's been somewhat neglected in terms of planting. It's mowed, I know. In terms of planting and beautification, is an area that is a bit of an eyesore. So I see that as an area. But the work that these people have been doing in collaboration with community groups, with iwi, with free parking, is tantamount to these photographs here. Thank you. That was good timing. The one at the top left is the Waka Armour Championships. Unbelievable. I went out and presented the medals. 2,500 secondary school students. Trevor mentioned the New Zealand Brass Band Championship. The economic development input that brought into the city, Glennis just told me that Eat Street collaborated with their committee, and Eat Street on the 4 nights was absolutely jam-packed to the gunnels till 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. They got special licenses, etc. So this is some of the good story stuff that we're not seeing in the media, that we're not seeing out there, and the job opportunities that having these big events creates is huge for our city. So I can see some spin-offs in terms of the follow-on that Julianne's been working with our youth and engaging our youth. The skateboard park concept at the youth spaces, they now want toilets because all the kids are going for a mimi in the bush. So there's all these other things that are flowing on from it, and we haven't come to you with our sport and recreation dream list yet, and but we look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, a question to you, if I may, Dave. You made the comment that the council will pick up the tab for 45 grand for the rogue boar. Is that normal procedure, or should the owner not have picked it up?
On our land.
The issue is it has no owner at the moment. Okay, so it was a boar that was abandoned. So therefore, who fixes it is based on the location that the boar is at, and the location is on council lane.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, page 20. Although I'm a bit confused again, because if you go back to page 19, you'll see solid waste and sustainability. And then on page...
This is all under...
I think it's designed to confuse me.
No, it's not. It is not.
But however...
This is all under Dave's huge part of the council work.
Okay. The Performing Arts Centre, it's interesting to note, I see, that they've had a usage of 60% for a couple of months, which is vastly better than the 18% average. Albeit I do see at the bottom of the page indications that the forward bookings have been a bit lower than expected. So I just wanted to make a note of that point. Thirdly, I'd be happy to move the bottom item on page 20, the Waikiri Valley Pools request for an increase in the interest of time, we need to sign it off, don't we?
I'll get that checked. It's just in here. We haven't got it as a separate recommendation. Well, I'll just ask the CEO to think about that more. I know what you're saying. I know. I hear what you're saying, and I'm just wanting to know how the CEO wishes to deal with it. But are those your only points, then, Councillor McVicker? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, ordinarily the operations report would certainly not be the place to be making sets of recommendations for funding. They should be separate papers that are actually tabled for your consideration that gives you the broad background. Having said that, if I need some guidance probably from Dave here, if there is an urgent resolution needed, then that may be possible.
Because you're quite correct, thank you for that, that it should go to SPNF, that sort of thing. How do you want to deal with it?
Through you, Chair. We put it in here, when the polypools was done, the polypools came through here, but then the council in the final determined that it should be delegated to the staff. Was the advice the team have come back with me. Therefore, what we've done is we put it in here so that if the council has any issues with this, okay, so it can actually just go ahead if the council is comfortable. Right? It doesn't actually require a council resolution. They need to get approval from the council. That can come from here. It doesn't need a resolution. So therefore, we put it into here. If the council is uncomfortable with what is in here and the price movement, then you can flag that. You can raise that. If, on the other hand, you're comfortable, then it will just go through. If you're not comfortable, then we will bring a paper back to the policy strategy so that it can occur that way.
I recall that did happen with the Polynesian pools, and you followed the same process here. So just to enable us, so it's good you identify it, and as you say, so is there anyone would like to raise a hand that have any issues with this price increase? No, we're all comfortable. Okay, thank you. All right. Now moving on, the next Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question relates to compliance solutions. And I note here the comment that Council has changed the method of charging for building warrants of fitness from being charged in arrears to being charged in advance. Not only that, I note that there's been a 60% increase in the fee, so the compounding effect of that on businesses faced with actually paying this charge, believe it or not, is jumping from $86 to $224, or a 260% increase in their fees this year. I would like to know who approved it, because as far as I'm aware, this council approved only a 3% increase in fees and charges.
The issue of moving to being at the time of the building warrant of fitness really comes down to the issues of sort of process. So the difficulty we ran into actually was within it. In the past they've gone out quite late, and they go out at the time when council is considering the charges for the following year. Right? So actually what happens is you've got a crossover in terms of, so what does that relate to? So really to sort of get that aligned, everything else is done, basically you get the consent at the time the consent works and you charge for it and you do it on that basis. This one was unusual, so we decided it was wise to realign that. At the annual plan, the discussion on the annual plan was around increases, but there was also a discussion at the annual plan where I think the council agreed that things like this, people would be meeting the cost. And this is the element of people meeting the cost. So within that, a person isn't necessarily meeting just the cost of their individual, but they are meeting collectively the holistic cost, because sometimes there are variations in terms of where that goes. So it's basically user pays. Rather than going down the track of keeping timesheets on all of them and billing one person sort of $190 and somebody else $290 according to some of the work that needs to be done in that regard, we've levelled it across the board, as we do with a number of the consenting fees.
Was there a subsequent question, Councillor Kent?
I have several questions. On that issue, my comment would be, I believe that decision should have been a decision for councillors to make, not staff. And I would like that point noted. It is council and councillors that determine strategy in terms of policy as to whether we charge rates and charge fees and charges in advance or in arrears. That decision should have been made by this council. I just raised that issue. I'll now move on.
I think we did discuss that at annual plan as a philosophy, didn't we? Can you correct me on that, Chief?
Through you, Chair, as actually the Chief Operating Officer have just said, this was a matter that was actually examined and discussed and debated during the long-term plan. So Council did actually set the overall strategy and direction for this fee and charge.
All that debate at the time.
Which was limited to 3% increase. Let's move on.
No, the philosophy was actually discussed at the time, Councillor Kent. I recall that, but however, we will move on.
Moving on to consent solutions. My first question is, where does commercial buildings fit into this table, please? Is this the new building figure?
Yes, that's correct, yep.
So am I right in thinking that what we have here is the dollar value of commercial buildings consents at 44 million is approximately equivalent to the dollar value of new dwelling consents in terms of their importance to this city? That then raises a number of other issues in terms of some of the figures that were actually released to the press by this council. And I would ask a question on the figures that were released to the Rotorua Review at the end of July and how they fit with the timing of this report, please.
This report here, the data is from, well, it was the most up-to-date data I had when I was writing this operations and monitoring report. So I can go and find out the exact dates from it, but it would be in mid-August sometime. And the reason why I ran the most up-to-date report is because we had some significant building consents come through and wanted to report the most accurate we could in terms of what I was trying to portray here was how the total number of applications and the different types translate into the different values. So in terms of approach to our business and things like that, the streaming which we're experimenting with and how you need to dive down into this level of detail to really understand how the numbers relate to the value and what we can take in terms of growth from that.
Okay, well, assuming there's only a minor disparity between the figures that were given to the Rotorua Review at the end of July and when you've produced these figures, can you please explain to me why the figure that you released to the Rotorua Review said $65.023 million worth was the value of commercial building consents in the last 12 months, whereas here it's 44 million?
I don't have an answer for that. I'd have to go and look at the two different data sets and dive into it and see what's missing. Off the top of my head, I'm assuming that the different date ranges may have meant that one large consent has fallen out of the data range. Yeah.
Yet the total value of the consents is approximately equivalent, so that's not the case.
I think we just need to give Paul a chance to go and check the dates because obviously you're not quite prepared for that question at the moment. And in order to give us a good opportunity to understand, we probably could have that in the future. Would you be able to email that out to us?
Yep,
perhaps?
I can certainly do that.
I think that might be a good way because I think the issue here is really that we are Councillor Kent, I understand, is going from what was supplied to the review and you see some different figures here, so it's just what's coming in the meantime? And
Yes,
if it was
yes, Madam
something
Chair.
huge, it would make the difference, I think.
But the total isn't that different, so there's something's not right, is what I'm
I
saying.
understand you're looking for that level of detail. That's not very helpful to you here.
Thank you.
So we'll ask for that to be sent
And
to us.
could they please include in that some information that was missing from the information that was released to the Rotorua Review, which was the number of sewer consents in 2015 and 3014, and I note they aren't broken down here either. It would be most helpful if we could have those, because this is in line with the CEO's comments as to the value of small consents weighting things. The calculations I've done seem to disprove that, but I would like to actually see the figures for myself, please.
Are we able to do that to Paul? Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes. Now, hang on. Who have I got next? Councillor Donaldson. No, you've had enough. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Rob. I at least appreciate your full report on the whole of the community for Rotorua. Your report from your team was fantastic as far as I was concerned. Now, it was a really worthwhile report to receive to councillors. But my question to you, has you and your team thought about targeted rates to pay for some of your activities in the future from certain areas of the community as the Rotorua population is ageing and people will be on a more fixed income?
I'll deal with that question, and then Thomas can probably pick it up subsequently. Any elements in terms of rates, targeted rates, get picked up through the council's revenue and funding policy, and that effectively gets led out of CFO's function, where all of the rates are considered, goes through the council, through the LTP process and through the public consultation. Yeah, I think there were discussions around some targeted rates in this area through the LTP process, and there was, I recall, a discussion between a uniform annual general charge versus breaking it up into targeted rates.
Question to Paul. Your report is good for the figures, but I'd like to point out that your U dwellings is probably going to increase in the next 12 months as the U subdivision in Stafford Rise has been signed off and people are starting to build now.
All right. Now, thank you, Councillor Gould. Look, I just want to say I didn't intend to give the impression that I didn't appreciate your report. It was purely that as chair, you get a list of reports coming to us, and I was understood yours was going to be 10 minutes, so we've allowed you a good 45. I think we've had plenty of time, and it's very important. We really appreciate all the detail and the update. And I think for a lesson for myself in the future, say, perhaps we don't have so many reports on the same agenda, because I'm aware of that. But look, thank you, and we really do take note of the wonderful work you're doing. So thank you, Rob and Julianne. Is it really very important? I'll interrupt you if I don't think it is, all right?
Well, Madam Chair, on page 15, at our last meeting, we didn't get enough detail on the building consents. Now we've got the detail on the building consents. What it illustrates for me is the level of economic activity around new housing, around alterations, around reciting dwellings, additions, garages, etc. And there is huge employment and trade supplies flow-ons from that level of economic activity. And this is for, as I understand it, this would be the 12 months up to the middle of August. And maybe a big building, when they reported to the review, has fallen off. So, of course, the numbers would come down. So, I mean, I actually believe this level of reporting is very helpful. It illustrates to our community there is $123.3 million of economic activity in the building consents area, and long may it continue.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Sturt, I do take your point, and I think most of us appreciate that level of detail. The only thing is, Councillor Kent, he wanted a bit more level of detail, and it's fine for him to ask for that, and so Paul's going to follow that up. All right, thank you for that. So now, Dave, do we now move to your waste strategy presentation? Yeah, thank you. And this is still under Dave's area, just to avoid any confusion, Councillor McVicker. At the beginning of the next meeting, I'll tell you what the titles are and the page numbers. Okay, all right. So welcome, Stavros. And Ian, I'd like to introduce you to Ian Cryer, who is part of our waste strategy engagement team, and he's probably got a title, and I admit I've forgotten it, but you can remind us. So this is Ian Cryer, everyone who's joined us recently.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If you haven't met him already.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Conscious of the time, we'll be very, as brief as we can. My colleague Ian Cryer will give you an update as to where we are with our community engagement. But I would like, before Ian starts his presentation, to draw our attention to a couple of key, objectives you have set for us throughout the LTP deliberations. Your resolutions through the LTP set for officers a number of target outcomes in terms of the draft waste management strategy. One of these outcomes was to increase the diversion of waste away from disposal and towards beneficial or recyclable use. It is evident at the moment that approximately about 40 to 50% of what goes into the rubbish bags is able to be recycled and redirected away from the waste stream. The second objective was to improve or reduce the risk profile of our current collection systems. Industrial and sector statistics indicate that where collections are undertaken through mechanical means, i.e. wheelie bins or similar containers, they represent about 70% of what's happening at the national level, and yet they only contribute about 5% of the injuries sustained by workers, while collections undertaken by bags or other uncontrollable systems contribute about, will represent only about 30% of the collection systems, but they contribute to 95% of the injuries in the industry. And therefore, one of the second outcome target for us was to reduce that risk profile we currently face. The third outcome was to improve the level of service we offer to our community, to make it more convenient for them to dispose their waste and to ensure where they are willing to recycle and redivert waste away from the waste stream and towards beneficial use, are able to do so through a curbside recycling collection, augmented where appropriate by transfer stations. And the fourth outcome is a very challenging one. You established through your funding and revenue policy some significant financial targets for us. A is that the cost of waste activity is to be funded exclusively by the targeted annual rate and not subsidized or supported by the general rate. And to that effect, where currently the average cost per household equates to about $230 per annum, our target is to improve that and to achieve an efficiency and productivity gain by almost 40% and achieve the same kind of level of service or improved level of service at a 40% cost reduction. So in going through these processes, we have engaged with the community to explore the most appropriate outcomes to achieve those key outcomes. And my colleague Ian will go through the process to update you as to where we are with that process and what's our immediate plans for the future and what you should expect to see over the next 2 to 3 months in front of you to make some decisions on our behalf. Thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, Your Worship, Councillors, good morning. Thank you for the introduction. So this is just going to be a very brief snapshot as to the engagement that we've been conducting with local communities. And just as a brief path forward, it will be very brief. So with regards to the draft waste strategy, which was submitted as part of the LTP earlier this year, we presented the proposed changes to the collection services with the aim of improving services while reducing cost. Option 4 alpha was selected by the council, and it is represented here, being a 140 litre rubbish bin to be collected on a weekly basis, 240 commingled recycling to be collected on a fortnightly basis, being tin, plastics and paper, and a 45 litre mixed glass crate there. That aside, submissions were received, but it was directed by the council that additional input was required from the communities due to the unique circumstances that they have, and it was deemed that potentially this solution may not be suitable for them. Due to this, we did decide to conduct engagement with local communities based on the localities with transfer stations, and we were going to use those as a hub to get people in from the wider areas to consult and engage. We also did choose 2 representational rural locations, which were Waikiki Valley and Rotorua, so that we could also gauge their thoughts with regards to potential solutions for the area. As you're well aware, they currently have nothing. The engagement that we did conduct was a district-wide survey, followed by initial and follow-up meetings in each of the locations. Just to confirm, the locations we did consult at were Tarawera and Akaraka, Akiti Falls, Mamaku, Waikiki Valley and Rotorua, so we held an initial meeting with a follow-up meeting the subsequent week. We also did one-on-one engagement. We replied to emails, RFS, phone calls, and basically every request for information that was made of us. We're also going to subsequently engage with iwi, aged and disabled in the forthcoming weeks. So while we have done the majority of our directed work, we're still going to consult with them for additional information and feedback. The main points from the community were with regards to concerns regarding the wheelie bins, particularly in the lakeside communities. The issues were with regard to long and steep driveways and the difficulties that people may have with regards to placing the bins out in the roadways. And some of these issues have been already indicated by the private collection points that have been set up in some of these outlying areas. Other issues were also the movement by those who are infirm, and the issue with regards to transit population. It was suggested that the solution isn't preferable for those who come here for mainly holiday purposes. Bags currently are quite ideal for them due to the fact that they're use dependent and they can currently leave and forget the bags when they use them. Bins aren't also viewed as being aesthetically pleasing as the bags, and that was a major issue that was raised to us to address. Ultimately, bags are perceived in these lakeside and rural areas to be more flexible and more convenient for all users. Other main points were that transfer stations should be retained, as well as the landfill and recycling facilities. And we perceive that rumours have been generated by the options that were considered as part of the draft waste strategy, of which closing some of these, while remote options, were still options. The cost is also an issue that has been raised by the communities out there. There was the perception that any changes may cost the ratepayer more. And I'll come to it in a second. We did indicate to them that the main changes that will occur will actually go a long way to actually improving the cost that the district currently bears. It was also suggested from the community that potentially a bags and bin option could be considered and explored. And this is considerably strong from them, and we've been conducting additional research to explore the viability of this option. The current position to the council, and this has been disseminated as feedback to the community, is that the council has yet to decide on any waste changes and no options have been ruled out at this point in time. We're still going to await input from tender applicants, as they are the experts in their trade. While we will present an option to them, we want to work with them to develop the best option for this district. We do want to also indicate to them that lakeside and rural waste solutions are likely to differ from those provided to urban suburbs. So while we may have a bins option for the urban areas, that may not be the same out in the outlying areas. The landfill is also very unlikely to close as part of these changes, and this has been communicated to the public. And recycling facilities will also be available at the recycling centre in the future, although the recycling centre's role may change somewhat given the changes to the waste collection system. For example, if we do introduce curbside recycling, you can obviously see the impact that that would have on the recycling centre. We have indicated as well that rubbish collection will remain a weekly service, although we are looking at a smaller size refuse bin to encourage recycling at the home. Unless the variance is minimal, also there is the expectation that localities will pay for their waste collection services, and currently, the Tarawera transfer station is actually subsidised by general rates in the wider district as a whole. The key message that we are communicating across, though, is that the council is aiming to obviously save the district considerable money, improve the services to the local population, and drastically increase the recycling that is occurring at this point in time. With regards to key dates moving forward, we have provided feedback on the engagement that did occur to the communities that went out last night, and it just highlighted the key points that were raised to us, the council's current standpoint, as well as the path moving forward. So they have been given the same key messages that I'm giving you here today. So with regards to moving forward for us, we are aiming to present a business case to the council with the recommended solutions so that we can subsequently go to tender on your authority. Once we are commencing the tender, we will work with the applicants to develop the best solution for this district, and we are aiming to present that ideal solution to the council February, March 2016. Throughout this whole process, we are aiming to have a robust communication program so the community is advised throughout the all stages, and so that they're informed at all times. That was a very brief run through, so if there's any questions, we can take them now.
Thank you very much for your hard work and your team and all the community consultation. And there will be a few questions, I'm sure. Can I just confirm with you, Ian, in terms of consultation, we had the last original idea shop, I know you weren't here then, but I just want to confirm that I've got it right. We had the first idea shop where we had a lot of consultation on this. We had the long-term plan. We've gone out to the rural and lakeside communities, and we've also got online where people can put their views. So that's basically covering most of it. Is there anything I've missed?
No, that's
basically it, which is quite a lot of consultation and involvement. Thank you. So first of all, we've got Councillor Sturt, then Mick Vicker.
One glaring omission, I think, is Nongata. Nongata has been probably one of the most proactive communities in terms of wanting a recycling centre for the last 10 years. However, I understand that, Ian. Ian, what I'm really pleased about, Madam Chair, in terms of the consultation is they're looking for local solutions for unique areas. For example, Rotorua, Rotorua. They currently have a bag service. We take the bag service away. We haven't got a centre there or a drop-off centre for them. So I'm pleased that if that's your intention, I'm absolutely delighted that you're engaging that way. The issue of if we go to curbside recycling, and I certainly hope we do, but we need to look at the costings. So where's the recycling going to be sorted? Is that where you highlighted that the role of the in-town recycling centre may change? It may become the centre for sorting and recycling from the curbside. I just wondered if that was one of the options you're considering as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. Firstly, with the issue of Nongodaha, we're meeting with the community on Wednesday night. Second question, with regards to recycling, the intention of a request for proposal really is to have one source of contact. We go to the market and ask people to collect their recyclables, and they can establish their own sorting facilities if they need to, or they can collaborate, with other providers or with existing providers. So, the idea is to get the market to give us the best ideas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Stavros, you made reference to the risk profile, in particular with regard to health and safety. Can someone answer me as to how serious is the issue of health and safety? In other words, is that at the end of the day going to restrict our ability to continue with the bags collection?
The facts are quite simple. Industry research identified, as I said earlier, that although at the national level collections are made at this level of 70% by mechanical means, like wheelie bits and so on, those activities only contribute to just over 5% of the total injuries in the industry, while the 30% of collections made by bags or other similar systems contribute to the other 95%. So, in going for the RFP, a major consideration would be for us is that it's whether the bag collection is a viable collection for us as a principal to a contract, and so we have to make a decision alongside with the effectiveness of the system, the efficiency of the system, as to what kind of level of risk we as an organization are willing to accept. My personal view at this point in time is that the world has moved forward, and the bag collection is an antiquated system, and we have a principal responsibility under the law to ensure that our services do not expose workers at the level of risk that is unnecessary. So that's where we're heading at this point in time.
Yeah. Are you saying, therefore, that we have not at this point of time have any restrictions or an ability in the future to continue with the bag collection? Is that what you're saying, Stavros?
Councillor McVicker, I think my view is you're aware that the Health and Safety Act is currently being changed. The penalties and issues for organisations such as ours of knowingly putting people at risk through processes which are actually established as risky is just simply unacceptable. We could not continue a process of bag collection whereby someone is on the back of a truck and physically picking up bags. My view is that that would be something we could not continue with. I think it would be unacceptable. Having said that, though, there may be alternatives to collect bags which does not involve physical handling of staff off the back of trucks. It could be a side load, a mechanised sort of process, and I think Stavros has actually been looking at that sort of an option.
Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, thank you, Stavros and Ian, for your presentation today. We've got a number of submissions going out to the public at the moment. May I suggest you go to carry on with a pop-up shop, going for your car parking, your city-focused, your waste strategy, and having one staff member who's conversant with most of those policies there to assist the ratepayers going into the premises, and also possibly having a time schedule up with key staff members, like Ian will be available at this pop-up shop for a certain time on a certain day, just so that if people want to talk more about waste strategy, that they can come and talk to the key person. To me, we need feedback from the community. You need to make the form simple, probably blank heading, and get the ratepayers put down what the submission's about, and then write about it. Because
Councillor Gould, look, I'm sorry to interrupt, but at the beginning I said that I understand you're trying to be helpful.
Okay.
I understand that. I just want to reiterate that we've had already this at the idea shop, and we've been through this extensive consultation. The staff here, which are very few, have a lot of work to do to get this back to us. And at the moment, you can have your say online. There is also, you can directly contact our staff through waste@rotorua.latescouncil.nz. And I will ask perhaps if our media team could consider putting that in the newspaper or something, that people know they've got those other options.
Okay. One question which came up on the screen which wasn't answered, you got feedback from 2/9, for how long is that feedback for?
Just confirm the date where we've got the people can have input into this strategy. Is it October? I think. Yeah.
We're still collecting information via the email address, but the consultation period was from the 3rd through to the 18th of last month.
Yeah, yeah. So but we still are having feedback, and there's also information regarding the feedback and meeting attendance on our website as well. So I think we're really trying hard to consult, but we need to understand that this has been happening for a long time, even well before the LTP. This started with the first idea shop, where people were coming in asking for curbside. And now we're hearing of all those who don't want it, of course, and we understand that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. I've attended workshops with the Lakes Community Board on the subject, and I've been to presentations by Stavros and his staff, and I would just like to say that I'm impressed with the way they have consulted with the community. I am very relieved to see that we are not shoehorning people into a one-size-fits-all, and I believe that Stavros and his team are actually heading on the right direction, and that we will end up with a very cost-effective series of solutions that benefit everyone.
Madam Chair, in regard to what the Chief Executive has just said, I think that actually needs to be made known to the public, because a lot of people think that the bags are still an alternate. Now, we've just been told that it's not so unless they're delivered in a different manner or picked up in a different manner. So I think they need to know, because otherwise I think it will calm a lot of people who are very concerned and would rather stay with the bag collection. If they know that it's not possible, then it changes your mindset.
Ross would like to make a comment
Madam
there.
Chair, I think it's quite important to highlight that at this point in time, we are in the process of gathering information, talking to the community, identifying their needs, and requirements. Now, we will arrive at a solution towards the end of this month, which says, having listened to all the feedback, and having considered all the implications, both level of service, risk exposure, financial constraints, and so on, the options on the table are A, B, C for collections, and some options are not on the table. So at that point in time, we'll tell people that, whether the rubbish bags, at a widespread range are viable or not. There are some areas, especially in the rural communities, where some form of rubbish bags is warranted, but we have to modify the method of collection because simply it's not viable to have people, as the Chief Executive identified, running behind the trucks and being runners behind heavy compactor trucks. But we will make the identification in good faith, and once we complete all our investigations and all our consultation processes. And we will make that very clear to the community and to you as a council, because we will be seeking your authority to proceed to request for proposals on the basis of our recommended option.
For highlighting that, Councillor Srank, I think sometimes the health and safety aspect has become a little lost in the furore over the delights of the plastic or the rubbish bags. But thank you for bringing in your rubbish bins today. It's good to have a look at them. Oh, it's obvious, isn't it? Rubbish, recycling and the glass.
So the...
Councillor Srank, maybe you could collect some neighbours that have as well. I'm hearing a few comments about the glass one. Councillor Mitfika needs a lid. All right. Oh, well, thank you for your presentation. I just want to say I really want to acknowledge that the many people in Rotorua who really are passionate about recycling and already do it at the centre. But I think with this way forward, what we are allowing is we're allowing for people who find it difficult to recycle to be able to do it as well. And when I think about the daycare centres and what they do at schools, about looking after the environment, it's really hard for children if they can't come home and easily recycle because of transport or other issues. So I'm really thrilled to hear that we're getting some good interest from our community over this whole issue. So we look forward to your report back to us in due course. Thank you. I beg your pardon, Councillor Stu? We will come up, Councillor Sturt, with some good options for recycling in the city and for businesses. They have not been left out of the equation. That's all in hand. Thank you. All right, now we're up to Finance Group. Thomas, are you? Yeah, sorry. You?
Correct me if I'm wrong, before
Have
the
we
Finance
missed
Group.
something? Yes.
T-Rex.
T-Rex, yes. Oh, we have to call...
Well, we got an email.
Dave, yes, we all received that email. So you are looking for a response to
Not
that?
necessarily right now, today, but could we have a full report updating us as to where we are? Because she has raised some interesting questions.
I totally agree, and I think are you happy to do that at the next meeting, or did you want to have a quick update now? Next meeting? Are you all happy with that? Dave. We'll just let Dave catch his breath, eh? He thought he was having a break.
I'll have to double check in regards to the email in terms of response. I don't think she sent it to council. She sent it to councillors.
And we asked Dave that you will respond to Kathy Horgan, isn't it? Yes, on our behalf, and we will get an update at the next meeting. Thank you. Right, Thomas.
Madam Chair, I'll assume it's been read, and are there any questions?
In regard to the rural seal, I just want to know how Amori Road has suddenly, what I call written down here, jumped the queue, because it was considerably down the list by comparison with other roads. We had a submission to the annual plan or the 10-year plan, and suddenly I see that Amori Road is to be on this year's seal list.
Yes,
So,
Councillor Serang, Councillor Sturt and I actually already noticed that, and we were thinking, have we got it wrong? So we wondered what had happened. So thank you for raising that.
Councillors, I'm not entirely sure about the comment of jump the list. You know, the decision about the priority for unsealed roads are made on the basis of crash records, drainage problem.
Of that, Stavros, because we've done it for years and we know the point scoring system. Has the policy changed? That really is my question.
No.
So I would like to know how Amori Road got to the top of the queue.
Well, I will make sure you get that information. Thank you.
Has it already started? It's planned to start soon, isn't it?
We're doing the preliminary, design at the moment.
Okay, so are you able to let us know before the next meeting, perhaps
Sure.
by email?
I'll let you know by the end of today.
Thank you. But it's just that previously we always got a list of who was planned over the next several years.
Okay.
Thank you, Stavros.
They're 3 years in advance, and the roads were listed, and the review was done every year of the points that they were scoring, and so that's exactly how that policy should be working. So there must be a reason why Amori Road has jumped.
Shouldn't be a squeaky wheel.
I will provide the outstanding list of unsealed roads.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's on page 24, and probably it's Stavros's area as well. And this was the reservoir, the leak and the break at Rotorua, the main reservoir. Do we take the opportunity when the reservoir has emptied out to actually flush it out? Do we ever do anything like that, or do we just get water into it as soon as possible? And this to me is a bit of a, yeah. I know once I was living out there and something happened and the opportunity was taken to flush it out, but I just wondered if we actually ever do that now.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we do. But the main intention here was to make sure that people didn't run out of water, though. So we do take any opportunity we can to clean anything up that needs cleaning up, obviously. In this case, we had to get the water back on quickly before people started to run out. But we do take those opportunities.
There's a bit of confusion. Next meeting I will endeavour to make sure I let you know which is under which group. So I'll do. It's actually very clear in the report, but I'll tell you as well. You want bigger, darker pen. All right. Well, we're up to finance and capability now. Page. Oh.
On page 20.
Which is Stavros?
Yep.
Under Dave, but there's Stavros does the roads and Andy does the water, Rob does the sport and recreation. So there's different managers. Okay.
Well, mine will be a question of Andy.
Okay.
And it is in regard to water supply, Taniwha Springs, alternate source, halfway down the page. It talks of the identified alternative to the spring source. It's a 5-bore arrangement, which I'm very aware of, and which is yet to be proven. Can you tell me, or Andy will remember, what was the estimate? Was 4-point-something million, something like that?
Through you, Madam Chair. The estimate for the alternative source was about $3.5 million, done some time ago. The proving of the bore is quite a large amount of money. That's why we haven't got to that yet. It's about $600,000.
And that is one bore?
That would be the proving of the bore system and capability for us to put 5 bores down would cost us around $600,000. So we haven't taken that step yet.
So I'm about right with my 4.1?
Yeah. That would be within the $3.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Frank?
No, that's...
Okay, so you've got a question on Taniwha Springs?
Yes, the money that was provided as part of the settlement was to go towards the alternate water supply. It's also been acknowledged by the Minister that could be utilised for another arrangement of the water source at Taniwha Springs. So that money is there to be utilised for whichever option we choose to go with.
So do we have a final question, Madam Chair? Do you have an ETA where we can finalise whether the current situation, the current supply can be engaged and be firmed up with Rotorua or whatever arrangement, and those arrangements, of course, will come back to us in terms of long-term funding. If the cost was $200,000 a year or excess to the water under its current regime, that would come back to us. But are we going to finalise that before we start spending the money in terms of
Yes. Yes, that's really in the hands of the negotiating teams on both sides. So we're actively involved in those negotiations and that ongoing work, and so we are meeting with the team again in the next few weeks. It's ongoing. Absolutely.
Councillor Maxwell.
Just briefly, I could help. Thanks, Charles. We had our first meeting of the newly formed trust, Taniwha Springs, on Monday night. Tuesday. And they're looking forward to meeting on the 15th of September with the negotiating team, all in good faith and very pleased so far with the outcome.
Okay, right. Thank you. Right, I think we've finished your group at last, have we? There we go. Thank you very much. Finances, yes, Thomas. So, Thomas, yes, we've all read your report, so you're just open for questions, because we'd really had a little bit of update from you in the beginning. Right, Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 26, Finance Group, 4.3.1. Second line down on the first paragraph, reviewing notes from Audit New Zealand June interim visit, quote unquote. The report to the Auditor General on the long-term plan on page 246. It says, service the Council is required to find savings and efficiencies totalling 56.4 million. So is that one of the questions which are going to be answered from the audit report, auditors?
Through you, Madam Chair, the comment there relates to the interim visit that audit made on the annual report, whereby they test all of our internal controls and provide us feedback on that, and so that's what that comment relates to, not what you suggest.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry, any other questions? Councillor Rokawate.
Yes, my one's... Oh, yes, this is on the health and safety, so I'm going on to page 30. Is that, we still, thank you very much. Yes, and it's on that health and safety. Sorry, am I too far ahead?
Sorry, Madam Chair, that's not me. So.
Oh, beg your pardon.
Just doing one.
I'm sorry, beg your pardon.
Yes, I go to I stop at 4.4, so yes.
So we come back to... No, that's fine. That's fine. All right, we're fine now. So you do the Rotorua contracting? I'll do my best. You'll do your... Yes, normally we'd have... Is it Tim here? But he's not here today, so Dave's going to do his best. So Councillor Rokawate, then Councillor Serang.
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It's just in the health and safety, and I get a little bit anxious when I see, reported under health and safety, a slight twinge, a slight strain, and because people who work in the area of contracting usually are quite staunch people, and I just wonder about them, about when we report, it's a slight strain, and I don't know if anybody ever checks to see how they actually do get on, but a lower back or a back pain in the back can go on to lead to many other things, and I just get concerned. Yes, it's a pain in the, can lead to a pain in the butt, but I just get concerned when I think it's being a little bit, how would you say, it's sort of not, it's a bit, no, I'm trying to not say dismissive, yes, dismissive, thank you. And I don't, I'm just saying, I just hope that isn't the case, particularly with this group of people who work there, and they can be very vulnerable to injuries, and they're staunch as, and so I just wanted that noted, Madam Chair, or maybe you'd like to comment, Dave, I don't know.
Yeah, look, there's no intention to minimise it. One of the things that is being pushed through the council has been really for the last 2 years is actually that we record everything. Right, so that all of those elements that we have the records. Not only do we record the accidents and the extent of the accidents, but we also record the near misses, right, where something happened or could have happened, so potentially somebody slipping but not falling. Those types of things are quite important for us to capture, and also quite an emphasis on capturing and identifying potential hazards. So within here, this isn't intended to minimise that. That's probably a genuine report in terms of what happened in there. And we are following up on sprains because of that very issue, and also keeping a track of whether some of those things where people don't believe they've been injured. You know, we have had cases in the past where people believe they've got a bit of a sprain. A week later, it turns out they've got a broken bone, potentially. And there are those things that do occur on the odd occasion. So we do follow up on those, because that's actually quite critical in terms of our tertiary rating.
Very simple question on the top of page 28. The Rotunda Garden was revamped and in brackets 302 metres. Does that mean that garden behind the Rotunda, and I presume it's the one near the pond, has been replanted. Is that what revamped means, or has it been reshaped and redesigned? What does that? What does revamped mean?
Through you, Madam Chair, we strip out certain gardens on a regular cycle. I will check and confirm with you, but my assumption would be that would have been one of the full strip outs, resoiling, fertiliser, and then replanting. But I can check that for you.
Thank you.
That's a permanent garden, not a...
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Madam Chair, health and safety. I, along with some of my colleagues, have had a number of emails from one particular ratepayer concerned about the use of Roundup on roadsides and in our gardens and that, and I share some of her concerns. We all were told that asbestos was wonderful once, and it isn't. And we were all told that Roundup was wonderful too, but the science changes, and I just wondered whether the CEO, I did forward on her email to Jeff, and I just wondered whether we're going to get a response from the Ministry of Health or whoever, Ag and Fish, or whoever it is.
I've spoken with Stavros, who's met with Joy, and he's had a discussion with her. I understand at this point we're looking at making sure it's not overused, but I think it's difficult to take it away entirely because there are some uses. But I've been emailing the lady as part of my portfolio because that's, yeah, so, and we certainly will look at a follow-up to see about the health impacts. Yeah. Yeah. I understand your concerns, and I personally have taken them on board as part of my portfolio, but I will work with staff to see if we can just give us as a council a bit of a report back at a meeting in due course. We need to investigate it a bit more, I think, probably. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Right. It was a fantastic, absolutely. Okay, I have to say this was a one-off. I asked for this because it was under my portfolio, so it was just to let it know what happened. This report came from the lady who did it, and it was actually very successful and part of waste minimisation. But this is probably a one-off report. You don't want it again.
Madam Chair.
Some people found it very valuable.
Madam Chair, this is an issue that's come up with meeting all the portfolio leaders, that some of the good stories in the portfolios aren't being told. And I think this is a great, they just posted in here in a report, but it's for people to pick up. This is a good story. It's a good initiative in sustainability, so that's for the media to notice as well as us, that we are moving on that sustainability agenda, and this is part of that. And all portfolio leaders wanted their stories to be posted.
Thank you, Worship. All right. Now we have the report back from Councillor Donaldson's report back from his conference. Thank you. Seconded. Oh, no, we don't need to move anything. It's just a report back. Would you like the opportunity just to highlight? I mean, it's a very comprehensive and thoroughly interesting report, and I really enjoyed reading it. But did you want to highlight anything in particular, Councillor Donaldson?
The only thing I would highlight was of the four conference themes, the digital one had a lot of emphasis, and I found particularly valuable and relevant to Rotorua.
I would add, however, that my spam has doubled since attending this conference, which I've alluded to in the commercialisation of some of the presentations, but the keynote speakers are fabulous, and yeah, I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards about it if they wish to.
Srang.
I may have missed it, but did we actually, are we now not approving councillors' attendances at conferences? You remember we've always approved councillors' attendance and how much it was going to cost and training. So are we going to continue to get those figures or are we not? And my question is, obviously Dave's been and gone, there were only 3 other Kiwis there, but how much did it cost?
I'm not sure, to be honest. This is the first time this has been brought up, and we all know, those that have been here before, that in the past this came to us, and in the past people who wanted to do training came to us as well.
Yeah.
I would need to ask the CEO. Perhaps that could come back at a further meeting. We've still got to go into policy. It should really come to policy, shouldn't it? Yes.
And in this instance, this was an invitation for me to go, I felt it absolutely appropriate that the chair, the leader of the economic development portfolio go because it was around economic development.
Council,
I'm not sure.
Sure.
I'm just. Councillor Sereng's alluded something to us,
yes,
and maybe we could think about how we want to deal with that in the future. And it really should come to strategy and policy and finance. I don't think there's any merit discussing it today. Right, now we've got urgent business brought up at the beginning. Before we go into confidential, Councillor Sturt, we have, sorry, what was that? Oh, so, I apologise for that. Okay, Councillor Donaldson moved his report. No, Councillor Sturt moved it, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carry. Now, we have got Councillor Sturt's urgent business to deal with before we go into confidence. Councillor Sturt, did you want to bring up your urgent business? Yes, it is. Just before we... Can we just please let Councillor Sturt finish? Well, we will let him finish. Put your speaker. Can you just put that on because it's for the benefit of
I cannot put a sign up on my private land for a long period of time stating that John Key's an idiot. Whether that's true or not is conjecture, but we'll run with that. But and a lot of people have had their signs pulled down because on the corner of Utah Street and Old Taupo Road, the boy Harris put up a real estate, I'm the best in Rotorua, within 2 days it was down. And yet we've had all these other signs that are not site related, I'm sure the signs policy, and it also prescribes the prescription size. Now, Malfoy Primary School, we've been planning for 18 months our school reunion. We put up 8 signs without, I thought we were in confidential. Oh, okay. We put up, it doesn't matter, we put up 8 signs around the town. Within 4 days of those signs going up, council staff were knocking on the door saying, you have to comply, you can only put signs up 6 weeks before the event. Stock cars have got signs out at Nongata on private land. Caulfield's Engineering just up the road have got signs up for the musical theatres and all this for weeks and weeks ahead.
I'm going to ask
corner of
Jeff.
Malfoy Road, and
I'm
yet
going to
these
ask
people are doing a thing that school's been open for 60 odd years, and they can't put their signs up. And of course the numbers are down, and it looks like the reunion could be in jeopardy simply because of this.
So there's a couple of issues here. The issue with Malfoy School, and the issue is about are we monitoring it in a fair and consistent way? So what we need to do is ask our CEO and then Dave to reply to you.
Yes, thank you. Chair, Councillor Sturt is actually fundamentally correct that in looking at the bylaw, which the Chief Operating Officer and I have done, so on the basis of your request, you are correct in what you're saying. I can't comment on the school reunion sign, however, but your request with regard to the yellow signs, you are right. I'll ask Dave if he's got a more detailed knowledge of the bylaw than I have. This is actually an issue where do you draw the line, and that is really the question.
Yeah, look, it is a point that was raised with Nevin the other day, and he is looking into it. I haven't yet gone through the bylaw in any great detail. I shouldn't even suggest in great detail. I haven't gone through that bylaw yet, but I will sit down and have a chat with Nevin in regard to it, and actually to the consistency of its enforcement. One of the things that we are conscious, of course, is of sort of jumping too quickly into these things and going with a knee-jerk reaction. So that is currently being looked at by Nevin.
And perhaps when we're doing that, if we could also find out about the Malfoy School signs as well. Okay.
An event that's well out. It's next year, isn't it?
No, it's October.
It's October, and so it's what we call 6 weeks sign up. When Councillor Sturt talks of musical theatre, we put them up 6 weeks before the event. So you can't open. You can't, in theory, you can't put that sign up until 6 weeks out from the occasion.
Yeah, that's for events. That's right. Okay, so they might have just put up a little bit earlier, and that maybe not have explained to them. All right, okay, Councillor Sturt, we'll let Dave investigate our sign policy. Again, Councillor Gould.
Yeah, the Macquarie Association went through 12 months, or just under 12 months of hell with the NZTA, just putting up a sign on Tenai Road with the safer families, the father and the children.
We're not going to get into
and
signs.
NZTA rules are different.
Yes, Councillor Gould, we're not going to get into all the sign today. We do know that it's quite different depending on what sign you're putting up where. And there is a district plan signage rule and there's a bylaw. So you've got to understand them and then the NZTA. So it can be very confusing for everyone. And we will try again to sort it out. Your Worship.
I've just that we also should look at visual pollution as part of our policy.
We have that in the district plan,
yeah.
and we need to. I'm not sure when that policy is due to be reviewed, the bylaw, signs bylaw, but I'm sure it's there. Thank you. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance. And now I just ask that someone resolve to go into public excluded, please. Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Raukawa-Tate. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we'll just give a few minutes for everyone that isn't able to be here to leave. But we won't break because we don't, I think we've got lunch waiting for us, haven't we? We've got lunch waiting for us, so we won't break at this point. Councillor Maxwell, he's holding up Phil Campbell. All right, we're just waiting to start our confidential part. Councillor Maxwell, could you let us start our confidential part, please? No, I see, yeah, well, that's a couple of minutes. That's it. Can do this. The Councillor Serang seconded. Councillor Donaldson. All in favour, please say aye.